Well, welcome to a meeting of the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm David Muller, I represent Secretary Philippine here. You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. You can read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.boston_MPO_NON_DISCRIMINATION. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Ibu Kurashi of the MPO staff at iqurashi@ctps.org or 857-702-3695 or via the chat box. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Others remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants. Please raise your hand via Zoom if you would like to use an AI note taker during this meeting. If you are on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. First item on the agenda is introductions. Please call the roll.
Certainly. MassDOT seat 1.
This is David Moeller.
MassDOT seat 2.
Michael O'Dowd.
Good morning, Michael. MassDOT Highway Division.
MassDOT Highway Division, John Romano here.
Welcome, John. MBTA.
Good morning, Sandy Johnston here from the MBTA.
Good morning, Sandy. Regional Transportation Authority's Metro West Transit Authority.
Good morning, this is Tyler Tarasi, representing Administrator Jim Nee for the Metro West Regional Transit Authority present. And Mr. Nee did indicate that he may be taking over the voting a little later on in the meeting.
Roger. Tyler, good morning. Massport.
Good morning, this is Sarah Lee representing Massport.
Sarah. MAPC.
Good morning, this is Eric Barassa with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
Good morning. MBTA Advisory Board.
Good morning, Hannah Stolikowski, MBTA Advisory Board.
Good morning. Advisory Council.
Morning, this is Will Palmer for Caitlin Allen Connolly at the Community Advisory Council. I believe Caitlin will also be joining us later on.
Roger. Welcome, Will. City of Boston seat 1.
Morning, Lydia Housley, representing City of Boston seat 1.
Welcome, Lydia. City of Boston seat 2.
Good morning, all. Chris Osgood, City of Boston.
Welcome, Chris. Now, at-large city, City of Everett.
Good morning, Jay Monty, representing Mayor Van Campen of the City of Everett.
I'm Jay. At-large city, City of Newton.
Jen Martin, representing Mayor Mark C. Laredo for the City of Newton.
Hello, Jen. At-large town of Arlington.
Leonard Diggins, representing Select Board Chair Diane Mahan, City of Town of Arlington. And it's a little bit noisy here. I have a 3-family going up right next to me. And yes, I still love density.
Welcome. At-large town of Brookline. I'm just going to do a quick search. Once again, at-large town of Brookline. I will return. Inner Core Committee, City of Somerville.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Erin.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Erin Chute, Town of Brookline, representing Select Board Chair Bernard Green. We're having some network issues here, so I'm going to at least take my video off and may have to call in from my phone.
Thank you for letting us know. I'm glad it at least worked for the moment. Thank you, Aaron. Intercore Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, representing Mayor Jake Wilson, City of Somerville, in the Intercore Committee.
Welcome, Tom. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Lexington.
Good morning, Megan Roach, representing Select Board Chair Jill Hay for the Magic Subregion.
Morning, Megan. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Dennis Giambetti, representing Metro West in the City of Framingham, Mayor Charles Siski.
Hello, Dennis. North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly.
Darlene Nguyen, representing Mayor Michael Cahill for the North Shore Task Force.
Welcome, Darlene. North Shore Suburban Council, Town of Burlington.
Good morning. This is John Strauss, representing Mike Espayo, Select Board Chair, Town of Burlington, and the North Suburban Planning Council.
Good morning. South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull.
Chris Diorio, representing Hull Select Board Chair Erwin Nessoff.
Hello, Chris. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham.
Rachel Benson here, representing Rentham's Select Board Chair Gallo and the SWAP subregion.
Welcome, Rachel. Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from Town of Norwood, representing the Trick subregion.
Good morning. We'll still call Federal Highway Administration. Not see Anthony. And with that, that calls the roll. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Chair's Report. I just have one quick item. I'd like to let the MPO know that we have released the RFR for the planning study for the Route 135, Route 126 MBTA grade separation project in Framingham. It's on the long range plan and it's funded partially with MPO funds. So I just want to let everybody know it's out for RFR has been released and we'll keep the MPO updated as it proceeds. Any questions on that? Seeing none, next item is the Executive Director's Report. Tegan?
Thanks, David, and hello, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting. I'm Tegan Tyke. I'm the Executive Director of the Boston Region MPO. I will just provide us a couple quick updates. If you can go to the next slide. So we'll start off with some staffing updates. If you go to the next slide, we've been bringing on, we have a few people we've been bringing on both in March and April. So first, I wanted to introduce somebody who I mentioned last time. Michaela Grenier has joined our communications and engagement team as a senior planner, and she'll be managing the public engagement program. So I would like her to just unmute and say hello so you all can see her face. I'm sure you will be seeing much more of her in the future. So Michaela, if you could please unmute and say hello.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to meet you all. As Tegan mentioned, my name is Michaela Grenier. I'm the Senior Planner for Public Engagement and look forward to working with you all in this capacity and appreciate the opportunity to say hi to you all in this space. So look forward to working with you all.
Welcome, Michaela.
Thanks, Michaela. Thanks, Michaela. And feel free to reach out. She's just started, so give her a little time, but you're welcome to reach out and get to know her if you'd like. So then if we go to the next slide, in addition to folks who I mentioned last time, Richard Barad and Liz Cumberbatch, we'll be bringing on 3 more people in March and April. So first, we'll be bringing on Stephanie Hager, who will be joining the Finance and Operations team as a Human Resources Generalist. She'll be joining later in March. She'll bring her extensive experience to this role, which supports HR functions like recruiting and onboarding, administration of benefits, and employee relations. And then in April, we will have Niall Bashan, who will be joining us as a data analyst in the project analysis and applications team. He is a PhD candidate in civil and environmental engineering at Northeastern University, and his research is focused on travel behavior, multimodal access, congestion, and equity impacts in the Boston region, all wonderfully relevant for the work he'll be doing at the MPO. And he also previously interned with the MBTA Service Planning Department, where he developed tools to support bus service reliability. And then lastly, starting in April, also will be Olivia Graham. She'll be joining the MPO as a graphic designer on the graphics team. And she'll be working to develop the high quality and accessible visual materials that you are used to that support our reports, research, and engagement at the MPO. She's bringing experience partnering with cross-disciplinary teams to develop materials for nonprofit, higher education, and other mission-focused organizations. So we are looking forward to welcoming her. Next slide, please. We have a grant update. The federal fiscal year 2024 Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, that is the second grant that the MPO was awarded, has been fully executed. So now the next step is we are just working with MassDOT to finalize the agreement for the matching funds that MassDOT provides us for this grant. The federal amount of this grant is about $7.5 million. The state match comes to about $1.9 million. So the total for this grant is over $9 million. And so we'll be able to do a lot of really great work with our region. In this grant, we'll be focusing on collaborating with municipalities to design and implement a variety of safety interventions. And that includes quick build projects, traffic calming projects like speed humps and high visibility crosswalks. So there'll be a big quick build element of this, but we'll also be supporting municipal level planning projects, crash analyses, roadway safety audits, and community engagement campaigns with this grant. So you'll hear more about it coming from us, but we wanted to let you know that that is well along the way. And we're in the meantime still working on the third FFY, I think it was FFY 2025 SS for, and we're working on getting that executed as well in the meantime. Next slide, please. So for today, we have quite a bit on our agenda for today, and I'm sure there'll be a very robust conversation. The first action item I just wanted to preview for you will be a presentation on transit asset management performance targets, which are set by our region's 3 transit agencies. And we'll have Angela Cervelo-Jones, the Deputy Director of Asset Planning at the MBTA, will be giving the MBTA portion of that presentation. And then we will move on to an amendment for the current TIP. This is the federal fiscal year 26 to 30 capital plan for the MPO, and we will ask you to release Amendment 3 for public comment. And what this amendment will do is address several changes to the current federal fiscal year 2026 programming year. Those are cost increases in some of the state highway and regional target programs, delays based on the application of the MPO's readiness policy, and some new transit and bike share projects proposed for programming as fill-in projects to address the budget surplus that's created by those other delays. Then we will have a presentation and conversation about the next TIP, the federal fiscal year 27 to 31 TIP. So we'll be presenting primarily today on the cost increases on the 9 projects that are in the draft federal fiscal year 27 to 31 TIP. And we'll ask you to consider these cost changes and other factors with the goal of moving towards being able to present a final scenario or scenarios for your consideration and approval at our next meeting. Then we will be also presenting an update to the critical urban freight corridor network. That update includes a review of existing corridors for continued designation, and then resulting recommendations for adjustments like removal or addition of corridor segments. And then finally, we will be presenting pending updates to the MPO's public engagement plan. Since the last update was done in 2021, we've been expanding both the resources and the capacity that we've dedicated to our public engagement program. And as a result of that, we have evolved and improved our practices, and we would like those practices to be captured in the plan. Next slide, please. So finally, thank you for responding to the RSVP survey about the next MPO meeting. As you know, our goal was to hold an in-person/hybrid meeting for you all. Based on your responses, board member responses to our poll, we will be hosting the first meeting in April on Monday, April 6th, and then we will hold it hybrid with the in-person location at 10 Park Plaza State Transportation Boardroom, as it has been in the past, on the 2nd floor at the State Transportation Building. So just again, this is a different day. It's Monday. It will be April 6th. That's at 10 o'clock a.m. and that replaces our typical first Thursday of the month meeting. We'll send out reminders, but I just want to make sure folks are thinking ahead about the change in the date that we will be holding the meeting. And at that meeting, as I mentioned, we will be finalizing the scenario development, asking you to approve a final scenario for the federal fiscal year 27 to 31 TIP. And also we'll be hearing on the MBTA's capital investment plan. So we'll have some folks from the MBTA speaking to y'all about their capital investment plan and projects that are relevant for the TIP. And that, Mr. Chair, is all that I have for today.
Thank you, Tegan. Any questions for Tegan? Seeing none, the next item on our agenda is public comments. I need help with staff because I believe there may be some electeds in the room, and we typically call them first. Is there a way you guys know?
Sorry, I lost my mute button for a second there. Let me check with Dave and Ibu and see where we're at. Hang on a second.
All right. Well, in the meantime, I will call on David Grisham from Swampscott because oh wait, I believe I just see Representative, right. Representative, I'm gonna mangle your name. Ruane? Could you unmute, please? Could somebody unmute her?
Oh, me?
Oh, yeah.
I'm a resident. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm looking for somebody else. Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry. All right, let's just start with David Grisham.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the MPO. Good morning, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is David Grisham, Swampscott resident and select board member. And this morning I'm speaking in full support of the Swampscott Rail Trail from 2002 through 2009. There were 4 town meeting votes related to the Swampscott Rail Trail. All votes were in the affirmative. In 2013, the rail trail was identified as a priority in the town of Swampscott's open space and recreation plan. In 2016, the Swampscott Rail Trail was identified as a priority in our master plan. In 2017, town meeting by a 210 to 56 margin overwhelmingly approved $850,000 in funding for design and engineering for the rail trail. This warrant article was also unanimously sponsored by the Board of Selectmen and supported by the Finance Committee, the Capital Improvement Committee, the School Committee, the Planning Board, the Open Space Committee, and the Conservation Commission. In June 2017, a townwide vote once again reaffirmed the town meeting vote by 12 points. And in 2020, the first portion of the rail trail was constructed, with the second section completed in 2021. If the pandemic taught us one thing, it's that we do not have enough green space, and we as a town in Swampscott have voted repeatedly to ensure that the town has access to low stress, safe alternative means of transportation and recreation throughout our town. The town of Swampscott is the 4th most densely populated town in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Green space is very much at a premium. The rail trail can be utilized to help remove cars from streets and be a safe, environmentally friendly way to get to and from school, including our new elementary school, as well as the Swampscott Middle School and the Swampscott High School, all of which would be connected or in a very close proximity to our rail trail. The additional green space can be used recreationally as a safe place to walk, run, bike, while connecting to a larger series of trails throughout our neighboring communities. Let's get this across the finish line. Let's get this approved. The great outdoors is medicine for the residents of Swampscott, and it's medicine for the region. The town of Swampscott runs the rail trail and respectfully requests the MPO's continued support of and inclusion of the Swampscott Rail Trail on the 5-year transportation improvement plan. I very much look forward to the day when all residents of our town, as well as the region, can ride their bikes and walk on the Swampscott Rail Trail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grisham. I see some other people who I know are associated with Swampscott Rail Trail, so I'm going to call them in order so we can try to keep them together. If I miss you, we'll just take your comments later, but let's go to Marzi Galaska.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Moeller, and good morning, members. My name is Marzi Galaska, and I serve as the Director of the Office of Community and Economic Development for the town of Swampscott. And I'm here today to speak on project number 610666, which is the Swampscott Rail Trail, and to request your support for keeping the project on the 2731 tip. As you have heard, the Swampscott Rail Trail is not only important to the town of Swampscott, but it has regional significance and importance. When fully constructed, it will provide off-road safe transportation options, connections to the school, as Select Board Member Grisham just described eloquently in regards to the crosstown connection to our recreation areas, commercial areas, as well as provide a critical link within the border to Boston and the East Coast Greenway trails, as well as a significant connection and important critical link between the Northern Strand and the Marblehead Rail Trail. It is my understanding that the reason for the proposal to be deferred on the new tip was due to the tip policy criteria that was adopted this past December. However, I want to bring to your attention that the criteria was never shared with the town. We were not notified of the policy change or the plan to remove the project from the tip. As you have heard, our residents, our local officials, our friends groups, and regional partners have been actively engaged in advancing the project. I personally have been working on this project for over 6 years. And I'm here to confirm and to just restate the fact that we are fully committed to the trail. We have a team in place that is ready to advance the project. We secured the design funding. We had strong local support. I hope that you received some of the support letters in regards to the project. And delaying this project or deferring it for a while will really lose or risk losing the momentum that we have so strongly built to advance this project. Just the community and the impact to the regional planning efforts that have been ongoing for this project. As I mentioned, we have a fully engaged design team, Dustin Kershik from STV Inc., who is our project designer. He is on this call, and he will provide you with an update on the project's critical design elements. He's here to talk about the current progress and the plan that we have to reach the 25% design milestone and to demonstrate readiness to advance this project. So again, I respectfully request the MPO that you consider maintaining the Swampscott Rail Trail on the 2731 tip. This project, as you know, represents a high-value regional investment with demonstrated public and municipal commitment, and keeping it on the tip will ensure timely delivery and long-term benefits for the community and the region. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next, I see Alexis Runstadler.
Okay, thank you, Chair Moeller, and good morning, members of the MPO. My name is Alexis Runstadler. I'm here on behalf of the Friends of the Swampscott Rail Trail. We're a federally recognized nonprofit representing thousands of Swampscott residents who not only voted in favor of the project in 2017, but those who have moved to town in the last 9 years with the promise of a rail trail to provide active and safe transportation for their families. I'm urging you today to retain Project 610666 on the 2027 to 30 Transportation Improvement Program. There's so many talking points I could go over today. David and Marzi have already touched on some, but I wanted to focus on the most urgent case, which is student safety. The need for this trail has never been greater. Swampscott's new elementary school serves nearly 800 students. Its middle school over 700. Both are located adjacent or very close to the proposed corridor. And with ongoing bus service challenges, which we've seen in the last year or so, many of these children currently have no safe off-road route across town. The rail trail would provide exactly that, including a protected crossing over busy Route 1A. This is a student safety issue as much as a transportation one. If you haven't had a chance to read the letter from the Swampscott Superintendent and School Board, I urge you to, as it contains a very accurate and, dare I say, harrowing description of school transportation challenges for Swampscott families. The Swampscott community has not just asked for this, we've backed it with real dollars. To date, Friends of the Rail Trail has contributed $188,000 in private funds towards design and engineering to keep us moving forward on the tip, including $38,000 just this year to preserve our tip eligibility. And this is all so that we do not need additional town funds. We remain committed to fundraising towards full construction readiness. And in addition, you will see from the letters, there's broad support for this project across the town government, Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Disability Commission, etc. Removing this project from the tip or delaying it further would waste years of planning and substantial community investment made in good faith. The Swampscott Rail Trail delivers on the goals of this MPO, has set for the region safer streets, reduced vehicle congestion, expanded access to active transportation for the residents of all ages and abilities. Its benefits also extend well beyond Swampscott, and I know you're aware that it is a glaring gap in the trail system on the North Shore. We respectfully ask that you honor the urgent mandate of our community, the partnerships that we've built, and the students who are counting on a safer way to get to school. Please keep the Swampscott Rail Trail project moving forward and keep it on the 2027-2030 tip. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I'll call on Representative Armini.
Thank you, Chair Moeller. Good morning, everyone. I so appreciate the opportunity to speak today. As Chair Moeller said, I am Jenny Armini. I represent Swampscott in the state legislature. Sadly, Transportation Chairman Brendan Creighton could not be with us this morning as the Senate is in session. But his Chief of Staff, Taylor Trenchart's on the line with us, and he is very much in support of keeping the Swampscott Rail Trail on the tip. This project is decades in the making. Residents first began organizing for a rail trail in the 1970s. Since then, the community has shown steady and overwhelming support, as you've heard. Town meeting has approved it multiple times, a townwide vote reaffirmed it, and local boards and committees stand behind it. Importantly, Swampscott residents have invested their own time and their own money to move this project forward. In particular, the Friends of the Swampscott Rail Trail have raised thousands of dollars from families and businesses, and they've helped maintain and improve the portion of the rail trail that's already complete. So their work reflects something very important. This project isn't just supported, it is deeply embedded in the community. Picture kids walking, biking, scootering to school, seniors relaxing and exercising without worrying about traffic, and commuters escaping the soul-crushing congestion. The rail trail enhances Swampscott's quality of life, but it's also a critical transportation link for the region. The trail connects Swampscott to my hometown of Marblehead, and it connects all of us to the Northern Strand Community Trail, also known as the Bike to Sea Trail, and it will serve as a key link in the Border to Boston Trail. It's part of the East Coast Greenway. The Swampscott Rail Trail is exactly what Governor Healy had in mind when she said, we invest in trails and we're investing in jobs, tourism, and the local businesses that keep Massachusetts moving forward. Swampscott is ready to move forward on this project. You have heard it. The town has put in the work. Design and engineering are underway. Partnerships are in place. Removing this project from the tip now would undermine all of these efforts, and it would disregard the strong community support. This project reflects everything Massachusetts seeks in a transportation investment: mobility, safety, sustainability, connection. I respectfully urge the MPO to keep the Swampscott Rail Trail on the tip. Thank you so much for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Representative. So that's the only, as far as I can tell, I grouped all the Swampscott people together. If you're a Swampscott person who I can't tell is with the Swampscott Rail Trail, we will still call on you and so you can still make your comments. Next up, I see, oh, wait, Tom Pelaria just let me know he's with the Swampscott Rail Trail. So go ahead, Tom. So if you put that in the chat, I'll call on you in order.
Yes. Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Good morning to Chairman Moeller and members.
Hey, Tom, you've got a really bad echo. Is there something you can do on your side?
I don't know why that's happening. I'll turn it off and I'll turn it back on. Is that better? Nope.
No, we still got your echo. But go ahead. We will just struggle through. Go ahead.
Is there a dial-in number that I can dial that you can put in the chat? I'm happy to dial in if that's easier.
Yes, Steph, can you send the dial-in number to Tom, please?
Certainly will do.
And Tom, when you dial in, is it going to have your name or is it going to say like Tom's iPhone? I just need to know to call on you once you're here.
Okay.
All right, thanks. All right, so let me see. I think I got another person in the chat who's Swampscott Rail Trail from STV. So I don't see your hand raised, but if you actually want to talk, can you unmute yourself and jump in?
Hi, good morning. My name is Dustin Kirksick. I'm a senior civil engineer and the project manager at STV, working with Marzi on the rail trail. Just a real brief update on the project status. We had been resolving a kind of a technical issue at the Paradise Road Bridge, which took a while, but we recently had the preliminary structures report approved by MassDOT. Our type selection worksheet is in review right now, and we expect that to be approved soon, which will open the door to the 10% over the shoulder and the 25% design shortly thereafter. We have a draft 25% design that's been sitting on the shelf ready to go as soon as we get to that point that the MassDOT reviewers can accept it. So I think we had some good progress lately, and MassDOT has been very helpful and engaged, and we've been making good progress.
Thank you. Tom, are you dialed in and can you see if it works now?
I am here now. Can you hear me?
Yes, and there's still a tiny echo, but not nearly as bad.
Okay, great. Well, please bear with me. I'm trying to close out here on my computer. Maybe that'll make it better.
Okay.
Meeting. Apologies.
No worries.
Great.
It happens with in virtual meetings. Don't worry about it.
I'm on my computer all day long for work, so it's a little strange, but hopefully that is better.
That is much better. Thank you.
I do open in two meetings. In any case, I wanted to say good morning to the members of the board and thank you guys for the opportunity to speak this morning. My name is Tom Falaria. I'm a resident of Swampscott. I'm actually a landowner inside of the proposed corridor. I'm here today to respectfully request that the MPO reconsider the inclusion of Swampscott Rail Trail Project 610666 in the TIP until it meets the standard project readiness requirements expected for fully federally funded transportation projects. This rail trail project was initially approved in multiple town meetings. The town meeting that actually approved the most recent taking of land inside of the corridor was Article 8 in 2009, which approved a 10-foot taking of land with no town funds used. And then again in 2017, which oddly enough did not approve any taking of land inside of the corridor. Needless to say, between 2009, 2007, and today, the town has had ample time to ensure that their submission and request for funding via the grant complied with the typical readiness requirements that your board has put forth to ensure that only viable projects are put forth in front of the board. Not only has Swampscott failed in the past 8 years to put forward finalized plans for their Stone Dust Path, they have a number of other issues and items outstanding that I don't understand why they haven't been taken care of to date. And frankly, I think approving the TIP funding and including them in the next round of TIP grants would undermine the very process this board has been esteemed to manage in the first place. I've already mentioned the incomplete plans that the town has failed to produce, despite having approval for this for since 2017 at least. I also wanted to point out that the town lacks permits. The town does not currently have approval from Swampscott's Conservation Commission to put the plan through sensitive wetlands, vernal pools, and to move sensitive National Grid equipment within the corridor. The town had submitted an NOI to the Conservation Commission in 2019. That NOI was greatly protested by National Grid, eventually leading to a lawsuit. That was also led to the town of Swampscott's Conservation Commission having to file for its own study. This issue has not come before the board since 2021 for consideration or review. In a meeting with the chair and speaking with the chair of Swampscott's Town Conservation Commission, he had stated recently that he is not aware of any final plans, has not seen final plans in years, and is not aware of this as a topic that's under review or consideration by the Conservation Commission. Since the year of 2017, the town has failed to provide the necessary permits needed to put the trail in the proposed corridor, and they have no path to do that anytime soon. I briefly mentioned earlier legal approvals. There are a number of different articles that were approved via various town meetings. These have been reviewed by a number of our lawyers. They've been reviewed by National Grid's lawyer. In a lawsuit filed by National Grid in 2021, it was called out that the town does not have legal authority to spend money on the land in the corridor or to take land in the corridor via the money approved. In short, the warrant language is faulty, and at the end of the day, Swampscott will not be able to acquire the land rights needed in the corridor. Fourth, the town has not acquired appraisals on any of the lands which they're hoping to take to implement the corridor. They have a set amount of town funds that have been budgeted in the 2017 taking. Those funds, first and foremost, cannot be used to take any land inside of the corridor. Secondly, even if a court ruled that those monies could be used to take land inside the corridor, the town does not have a current and accurate understanding of what those taking costs could be. And I have confirmed recently that the town has spent no money on appraisals and has no recent appraisals since at least previous to 2017. Another thing I want to call out is in recent meetings, I understand that the board has called out the importance of updating applications for grant monies over time. My understanding is that in 2019, the town of Swampscott filed their initial grant application for almost $9 million for a 2.1 mile trail. I personally haven't seen any updates to that application since, despite major changes to plan design, despite what I can only imagine are major changes to cost. I mean, average inflation was 27% over that time. So I don't think that accounts for any inflation or price changes that took place over the last 6 years since they filed this application. And I know that it doesn't take into account the costs associated with having to move National Grid utility equipment in the corridor. I know a lot of people have worked very hard on this initiative over the years. I think there's a lot of people that could potentially see benefit and more recreational opportunities in Swampscott. I very kindly ask the board to respect the own process that you've put forth and make sure that those communities that are coming forward and asking for money and asking to get in your approved budget plans do so following the policies and procedures that you put place. Otherwise, I really fear that you risk rewarding the wrong communities and potentially setting a bad precedent for other communities that are asking for funding in this way. I appreciate everybody's time and consideration this morning and appreciate the work that you do for our communities.
Thank you. I think we're done with the Swampscott Rail Trail commenters, I think. So Brad Ross, oh wait, Marzi.
Yes, thank you. I just, if I could.
Wait. I don't want to engage in debate during public comment. So if there's something you need to say that isn't going to then require Tom to actually respond again, I'm happy to let you clarify something, but I don't want to engage in a public debate.
I totally understand it and I appreciate it. So yes, this is just a point of clarification, if I may.
Sure.
I just wanted to make a comment in regards to the lawsuit with National Grid. The town of Swampscott has resolved the lawsuit, or the lawsuit has been resolved, and the town has secured a 99-year lease on the right of way that was owned by National Grid. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Now, Brad Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Brad Ross, and I serve the city of Somerville as Director of Mobility in the Mayor's office. I have a quick comment on the board's 26 to 30 tip amendment and 27 to 31 new tip discussion. And Chair, I think it's a little hard to pivot from project-specific commentary. This is a global comment. So as a reminder for all of us, we're entering a pressure-packed time of the year. Many of us have been through this pressure cooker before, but some of us are a bit newer. I just want to recap. Every spring, our staff are being asked to prepare an incredible amount of dense technical information every single week. Our board is being asked to absorb and socialize really complex information. Our public begins paying attention with much greater urgency, and this is a really, really good thing. But openly acknowledging these dynamics is a foundation for empathy and respect for everybody involved in these processes. In recent years, staff and board members have committed ourselves to process improvements to reduce the stress and uncertainty of this annual sprint. We defined a series of problem statements which include, but are not limited to, barriers to small communities getting new projects considered on the tip, insufficient incentives for project proponents to push schedules forward, general lack of familiarity with the nuance of project development milestones like pre-25%, 25% submitted, 25% design public hearing, etc. And to help mitigate these problems, the MPO and our agency partners adopted a series of cost increased policies in 2021 and a readiness policy in 2025. I want to give a round of applause to everybody who's been involved in these process improvements because they improve transparency in decision making and open doors for a variety of legitimate projects in our process. But we're going to be asked to make decisions in the weeks ahead that may not align with these processes and guidelines. And Chair, I think that's okay. This is an independent board, and this board can do its best to honor the work that has gone into these process improvements while acknowledging that more process improvements will occur next summer and the summer after that. We are constantly learning, and I appreciate the journey that everybody has been on together. So 6 months from now, let's just commit ourselves to holding hands, documenting what we learned this spring, and getting even better at this process next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad. Next is Aaron Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm Aaron Clausen, the Lynn Principal Planner, here to speak on behalf of two projects that the City of Lynn is advancing. I'll focus on the first one. It's the Essex Street Reconstruction Project. For reference, it's project number 609252 that is currently at the moment programmed for tip year fiscal year 28. I'm going to focus on some of the milestones and sort of update on the work that's progressing. Just for time and brevity, I feel like the MPO has been very supportive of our projects and understands the value that both of them bring to us in terms of traffic access, transportation access, improved safety, and et cetera. For Essex Street, just some updates in terms of timeline. The 25% design was submitted nearly a year ago on March 28th, 2025. We just held a design public hearing, the 25% design public hearing, March 12th, less than 2 weeks after the deadline for the updated readiness framework. A great public meeting where we had pretty consistent support and feedback. Not terrible surprise. We've been really aggressive engaging the community on this project. I think that was our fourth, maybe our fifth public engagement opportunity. So we see strong support in this project to move it forward. We anticipate submitting our 75% design submission for January of 2027, following that with 100% design in October of 27, with a PS&E in February of 28, and a current add date for March 24th, 2028. We've been consistently engaging with the MassDOT project team and our partners within that agency. And the feedback we've received throughout this process over the last year is that we are still on track to meet that add date. So we do understand, to Mr. Rawson's point, that this is a really challenging time, and there's a challenging dynamic with this current and next year's TIP. But we believe that this project can remain in its current programmed year and meet the deadlines that are required. A couple of things I just want to note beyond the fact that MassDOT is sort of supportive of our timeline and meeting our ability to meet the add date, is that by shifting this project back to 2030, along with the Western Ave project, is going to have a pretty big impact in terms of construction. We're talking about nearly $70 million of roadway reconstruction happening within the same community in the same years. So just want to consider the construction impact that would be on the city and its residents, particularly given the fact that we believe we can still meet our deadline. We're very aggressively continuing our design work with the design team, Ty and Bond, and bringing in additional support through the right-of-way process, which we are beginning to address. So feel that, again, we can continue this, and make this timeline. So just respectfully requesting the board to consider retaining this in 2028. For Western Ave, just again, some milestones here. This is the complete reconstruction of Western Ave, project number 609246. It is currently programmed for 29, fiscal year 29, and I understand, we also understand that that's being proposed to move out to 2030. Again, a couple of quick milestones to report back to the commission, to the board here. 25% design submission was done in August 29 of 2025. Comment resolution meeting was held in January 23rd of this year. And because the project is now estimated to go above 50 million, it's entering a value engineering process and is being coordinated with MassDOT as we speak. We do anticipate to submit the 75% submission in October 27 with 100% design submission by 28. PS&E later that year of 2028, and the current add date is February 9th, 2029. Given the fact that this is going to go through the VE process, which will add additional time to this timeline, we're not requesting that any changes that or that the project remain in FY29, and can appreciate that some additional time is necessary for this project to be fully developed and implemented. My only comment on this one is that we again continue to appreciate the support the MPO has provided to us on this project, as well as Essex Street, and look forward to continue working with our partners at MassDOT, advancing that project as quickly as we can. I don't have anything else to add to that. We'll hang here and stick around if there's any questions that board members have specifically about the project and our ability to get this done, or project specifics. More generally, happy to answer any questions as they come up later on.
David, we can't hear you if you're there.
This is David Hong. I believe, looking at the chats, that David may have dropped off.
Did David drop off?
If Eric, for the moment, yes, Eric, if you'd like to step in.
Yeah, I can take over. Thank you, Aaron. Let's see. I'm going to go to Darlene Nguyen.
Excuse me. Sorry, getting over being sick. Thank you, Vice Chair Barraza. I just wanted to make a, request that I'm speaking on behalf of Mayor Cahill and in regards to the Swampscott Rail Trail. And I wasn't sure if this was the right time to speak. I talked to Dave Hong offline. So is it okay if I provide?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So just on behalf of Mayor Cahill, he asked me to ask the MPO board to respectfully reconsider removing the Swampscott Rail Trail project from the TIP at this time, with respect and understanding of the board's policies and procedures. He believes this project has significant local and regional importance. There's a lot of history behind it, as we've heard. I don't want to repeat all the things that we have already heard, but that there is progress being made, and we expect that this project will be able to move forward with local and regional support. So I just wanted to make sure that was stated. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Darlene. I'll move to Allie.
Good morning. Thank you, Vice Chair and members of the board. My name is Allison Rayum. I am the chairperson of the Franklin Commission on Disability, as well as an accessibility specialist. I am speaking as a general Massachusetts resident right now with a new project to suggest. I apologize if I'm unaware that this has already been discussed somewhere, but with accessibility and safety in mind, I recently had a resident inquire with me for advocacy about how at stoplights, a general stoplight, of course, we know the three colors of those, but when there is a singular light, traffic light, that is either solid or flashing, if it's only distinguished by color, those who are colorblind may not be able to determine if it's a stop or a yield. They may not know if it's red or yellow. So I am suggesting that in future planning, any traffic lights that are singular lights that there's no other way to determine if they're red or yellow aside from knowing the color, have an additional sign next to them indicating whether it is to stop or to yield. So thank you for hearing.
Okay, Allie, okay, thank you for your comment there. I'm going to go to Joe Fleury.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak here. I am the project manager for the City of Boston's Cambridge Street Bridge project. And during today's TIP development discussion, I'd like to encourage the board to consider programming the Cambridge Street Bridge in federal fiscal year 2028. We've prepared a memo that is posted to this meeting's calendar with more information, but I'll give you the highlights here. First and foremost, it will help fill the surplus in federal fiscal year 2028 and free up about $20 million in federal fiscal year 2030, which I understand has some very limited availability and maybe even a deficit. Second, it will preserve this bridge before a potential structural re-rating that has the possibility to impose disruptive weight restrictions on the bridge, which will impact transit and commercial vehicles. Thirdly, delaying the project until 2030 will allow the bridge's structural components to further deteriorate. This will lead to more costly repairs for this project, and in a worst case, may change the project scope from a bridge preservation to a larger scale full superstructure replacement, which will obviously be more costly and impactful. Furthermore, it'll allow this project to be completed before any work on the Rutherford Ave Sullivan Square project that is programmed further out in the TIP. These benefits aside, there's an alignment between MPO staff, Mass DOT, and us on the project readiness for 2028. We feel this project scope is relatively simple, has a small amount of temporary right-of-way impacts. Our 25% comment resolution is complete. We are scheduling the design public hearing now. Our design is on a faster track with a 75% and 100% combined submission. Again, there's a lot more information in the memo that's posted to the meeting calendar. And then finally, we don't see this project being moved as like a singular exception to the MPO and the TIP guidelines. We'd like to work with the MPO staff to maybe refine those readiness guidelines for projects of this type with relatively simple scope and right-of-way impacts. And hopefully those could be codified in future TIP years. Again, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm here along with our design consultant during the discussion later this morning, this afternoon, if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And thanks for sticking around for the meeting in case folks have questions. So I don't see any other public comments. So I'm going to pass it to MPO Executive Director Tegan to wrap this up.
Thanks, Eric. And thanks for giving me the opportunity just to kind of close out this public comment period today. Particularly around this time of year, I'd like to thank very much all of the project proponents and project stakeholders for the time and effort that you make in coming to this forum to make public comment. I'd also like to thank you all for all the work that you've done with MPO staff throughout this process to ensure that we're working with the best information possible. In this process, we strive always to communicate proactively with every single project proponent. We use the contacts that you all have provided us, typically the municipal contacts in a master TIP contact list that we use extensively. So we use that list to send information about policy changes and inviting you to forums to discuss the policy, your projects, and any other detail. And we're also always available individually. Those emails typically start around December, as they did this year, and it's extremely important to us to know that you are receiving that communication and you have ample time to understand the impact of readiness determinations and policies on your projects. So, and also to give you time to give us up to date information. So if you feel that you have not received emails and information in a timely manner, please do reach out to us. The easiest, simplest way is to use our TIP email address, which is tip@ctps.org. And once again, I'd just like to close out and thank everybody for your time and effort and participation in our process today. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, thank you, Tegan. So let's move on to committee chairs' reports. Do we have any committee chairs with a report? And I'm seeing Lydia from the City of Boston.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I'm here today filling in for Jen Rowe, who, as you know, is the committee chair for the TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee. And with due thanks to her and other members of the committee, I'm pleased to be able to share a report out today in her absence. So the TIP committee last met last week, Thursday, March 12th, during which time staff focused on a few topics relevant to today's discussions and ongoing discussions for the future. First, staff provided updates on project costs and readiness. Members of the committee inquired about the original programming years and costs of projects that had cost increases, and noted that this information helps tell a more full story of and clear picture of a project's history. Members also asked about the breakdown of costs for a few specific projects, in particular the Belmont Community Path project. MPO staff at that time shared that rail crossing projects and rail with trail projects in particular have unique needs and tend to incur higher costs than other rail trail projects, and that in particular managing diversions for the commuter rail during the construction of the Belmont project's tunnel and trail were particularly responsible for those cost increases. Later in the meeting, the committee drilled into an example from Brookline showing how MassDOT adds additional contingencies to design and construction at 25% design submission, but not necessarily beforehand, which has a cost implication for projects that are at that milestone. And that helps explain a large portion of the increase in cost seen at that time for a lot of projects. The committee talked about this needing to be something that gets worked on going forward, given that the readiness guidelines allow projects on the outer years of the TIP to move ahead with a pre-25% design submission. In addition, staff talked about the insufficient funding available to cover both project cost increases and program new projects in federal fiscal years 2030 and 2031, which of course is not news to folks here today. The MPO must fund the entire cost of a project, and for that reason, in order to fund new projects or continue funding projects that do not meet the MPO's readiness guidelines, the board would need to deny cost increases, remove other projects, or deplete funding reserves. As part of this conversation, the committee learned that there are not many options for using advanced construction or accelerating projects to resolve deficits and surplus, which seems like it could be an obvious avenue for resolving some of these conflicts. Advanced construction can, as we know, only be applied to projects costing over $25 million. And of the candidate project staff found appropriate for acceleration, really only the Cambridge Street Bridge project would address the budget surplus in federal fiscal year 2028, as Joe Fleury just spoke about, and resolve the deficit in federal fiscal year 2030. At that time, MassDOT confirmed that the federal fiscal year 2028 would be an achievable readiness year for that project based on project schedule, and progress on the right-of-way process is moving along. This would leave a $6 million surplus in the federal fiscal year 2030 program. Of note, there is only currently an anticipated surplus of $300,000 available in federal fiscal year 2031. Staff also project that about $70 million of unprogrammed funding in federal fiscal year 2032 may be available, and members noted that this could diminish quite quickly if the board does not adhere to the readiness and cost control policies that have been put in place at the direction of this board. Members also asked about the history of Boston's Boylston Street project, as well as recent design and public engagement milestones and whether the project could be accelerated. Finally, the MPO staff gave members an early look at some of the proposed projects for Amendment 3, which we'll be discussing later today, including fill-in projects for federal fiscal year 2026. Advance notice about the federal fiscal year 2026 budget surplus allowed MPO staff to solicit projects early, and they received transit projects in time to score them, which I know folks are extremely grateful for. The next committee meeting will be Thursday, March 26th at 1:00 p.m. At that time, the committee will discuss factors the board could consider in its decision on a final program of projects. Thank you very much for the time.
Lydia, thank you for that summary, and thanks for stepping in for Jen. Really, really appreciate it. I'm going to pass it back to David Moeller to continue chairing the meeting.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions for Lydia? Seeing none, is there any other committee chairs reports at this time? Then we will go on to the next agenda item, which is the Community Advisory Council report.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. During our March meeting, the Community Advisory Council hosted a trio of organizations, Bike to the Sea, the Cobden Square Neighborhood Development Corporation, and Transportation for Massachusetts, also known as T4MA. We want to share that T4MA is currently accepting applications for their Champions Institute, which is a statewide program that provides training and support to public officials on how to implement complete streets strategies in their communities. This year, T4MA is asking public officials to partner with a local community advocate to submit an application as a pair. The deadline for that is March 31st. Additional information can be found. I think we're going to put a program link in the chat later. The presentations from these groups provided the council with a localized look at active transportation, community-based development, and statewide policy advocacy. It reinforces our commitment to bringing a broad range of on-the-ground perspectives to the MPO's attention. In addition, we engaged in a robust discussion led by Sean Rourke regarding the development of the MPO's public engagement plan, which I know he's providing an update on later today in the meeting. The Advisory Council looks forward to continuing to partner with public engagement staff during this process and to ensure that the MPO's outreach strategies are inclusive, accessible, and practically effective for the diverse communities we represent. That is our report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Will. Any questions for Will? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda is the action item of the Transit Asset Management Performance Targets. Adriana Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Adriana Jacobson, and I am a transportation planner for the Boston Region MPO. Next slide, please. I am joined today by Angela Cervello-Jones, the Deputy Director of Asset Planning at the MBTA, to present to you the 2026 Transit Asset Management Performance Targets. And before I begin, I would like to thank the MBTA and WRTA and CADA for their help in compiling these targets over the past few months. Next slide, please. During this presentation, I'll give an overview of how the transit asset management performance requirements fit into the performance-based planning and programming program. And then I'll pass it over to Angela to deliver some of the MBTA's portion of the presentation. Next, I will present the CADA and MWRTA targets, discuss some next steps and opportunities, and finally open up the floor for a discussion and a vote. This presentation goes through the data fairly quickly, so for a more detailed overview, please consult the memo attached to the meeting calendar. Next slide, please. The MPO uses a performance-based planning and programming process to assess how its spending decisions support progress towards its vision and goals. And the U.S. Department of Transportation requires states, MPOs, and operators of public transportation to establish targets for performance measures in key areas. This is just a reminder that there are some targets that are set every 2 or 4 years, but the roadway safety, transit safety, and transit asset condition targets are set annually. Next slide, please. The target setting process is as follows. The US DOT establishes reporting requirements for transit agencies, and the FTA's Transit Asset Management Final Rule sets safety measures. Each transit agency sets targets for their relevant assets, and lastly, the MPOs work with transit agencies to set regional targets. Next slide, please. There are 4 categories of assets for which transit agencies set performance measures. For all 4 categories, agencies are aiming for a lower percentage of assets meeting these characteristics. So first is rolling stock. These are public transit vehicles taken by passengers, such as buses, trains, ferries, and paratransit vehicles. This is an age-based measure, so the percentage of vehicles that have met or exceeded their useful life benchmark, or ULB. And just because a vehicle has surpassed its ULB does not mean that it's unsafe to ride. It's just a benchmark for transit agencies to target. Next category is equipment. So these are non-revenue vehicles. These include maintenance or service vehicles or any vehicles that do not carry passengers. This is also an age-based measure based on ULB. Next category is facilities. These assets are measured on the Transit Economic Requirements Model, or TERM scale. This is a rating of 1 through 5, where 5 reflects the best conditions, and a rating of 3 is defined as moderately deteriorated or defective, but has not exceeded useful life. All three agencies set targets based on achieving this rating of 3 or higher. Lastly, we have infrastructure or fixed guideway. This is the performance-based measure defined as the percentage of track segments with performance or speed restrictions. The MBTA is the only agency required to set targets for this measure, as it is the only agency with track infrastructure. Next slide, please. The FTA, thank you. The FTA requires that agencies produce TAM plans every 4 years, but targets are adopted annually as part of an annual narrative that agencies submit to the National Transit Database. MPOs consider these targets that the transit agencies have set and set targets for their respective regions. And lastly, as a reminder, while MPOs and transit agencies are required to set these targets, FTA does not impose penalties for failure to meet these targets, nor do they reward achievement of these targets. I'll now pass it over to Angela to present the MBTA's portion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Hey, everybody. My name is Angela Cervello-Jones. I am the Deputy Director of Asset Planning at the MBTA. Nice to be back again to present the MBTA's Transit Asset Management, or TAM, performance measures and targets. Next slide, please. So just before I get into our performance and our targets, I just want to acknowledge that the MBTA has a very diverse and complex asset inventory that includes much more than just these 4 asset categories that I'm going to be discussing. We continue to work to build a robust asset management program, and this presentation today is related to an FTA reporting requirement that is just one component of our transit asset management program. So I just want to assure everyone that this is not where transit asset management stops for us. So getting into rolling stock, this asset category refers to revenue vehicles that provide passenger service to customers, and as Adriana mentioned, is age-based. Next slide, please. So we continue to see improvement this past year for bus and commuter rail as we continue to replace our older fleets. For fiscal year 26, we are accounting for continued aging of our coach cars on the commuter rail, so that is why we are targeting or expecting somewhat of an increase. That is because some additional vehicles will hit their useful life benchmark in this coming year. For fiscal year 26, we are again setting conservative expectations for continued acceptance of the red line and orange line cars. While we did see an increase from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25 in this area, we were still well within our targets. We tend to set fairly conservative targets in this area. And then finally, just something I want to note is for paratransit. These are the ride vehicles. We this past year saw many of our automobiles hit their useful life benchmark, and next year expect to see some of our vans hit their useful life benchmark. We continue to monitor the performance of these vehicles and the mileage they're actually driving. So as we replace those vehicles in the future, we expect that trend to go back down. Next slide, please. So moving into equipment, these are also vehicles. They're just non-revenue vehicles, so they don't carry passengers. Similarly, the measure is based on age related to the useful life benchmark. Next slide, please. So for equipment, this is sometimes kind of a tough category because they have a non-cyclical retirement and replacement schedule. Many of these vehicles can be kept for quite some time before they need to be replaced. Think of things like snowplows that don't get a ton of action, so they can be stored for quite some time and still perform well past their useful life benchmark. So we tend to see less even trends in this area. So for fiscal year 26, we are expecting to see a decrease in the measure for automobiles. That is because we continue to retire our older vehicles. We saw some success this year with retiring retire vehicles. These are like SUVs, vehicles like that. But we do have some additional vehicles that will be hitting their useful life benchmark next year, so we're accounting for that in the target. And then finally, steel wheel vehicles. We have seen some increases as vehicles have hit their useful life benchmark. Again, we continue to monitor this area and sort of plan for the replacement of these mainly work vehicles as needed. Next slide, please. So looking at facilities, this covers passenger facilities, so stations and stops. It also covers parking facilities and administrative and maintenance facilities. And we are looking at the percentage of facilities that are rated less than 3 on that 5-point FTA term scale. Next slide, please. So facilities are are assessed once every 4 years. This is an FTA requirement. This means that each year only a subsection of the facilities inventory is eligible for an updated condition rating. So we tend to see a long lead time after a capital project completes, between the completion of that project and when it may be reflected in our inventory. But we do continue to invest in state-of-the-art repair and modernization improvements to all of our facilities. So this past year's condition assessments captured the continued improvement in the condition of our facilities, which is wonderful news. When it comes to target setting, we tend to set our targets level with the previous year's performance. That is because it is tough to project what the condition of a facility might be without actually completing that assessment. And so the targets are meant to be more realistic than aspirational. So we set them level so that we are not making undue assumptions about the condition of facilities this coming year. Next slide, please. So finally, looking at infrastructure, this refers to the percentage of revenue track miles by mode that have speed restrictions. Next slide, please. So we hit all of our targets this past year for speed restrictions, which is great news. Light rail and heavy rail in particular, we saw and have continued to see significant improvement as we invest heavily in infrastructure improvements along the right-of-way. For commuter rail, we saw a slight increase in that measure, but that we tend to see like a slight fluctuation like that, but still well within targets. We, after speaking with our internal stakeholders in engineering and maintenance and railroad operations, we have continued to set consistent targets around 4%, and that is to account for any slight fluctuation or conditions that may arise during this fiscal year. But we do expect to see continued improvement, especially for the transit system. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I will kick it back to Adriana. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. If you go on to the next slide, please. Awesome. So I'll now present the CADA and MWRTA portion. So beginning with rolling stock, MWRTA and CADA did not meet their 2025 targets for replacement for their rolling stock vehicles because replacement vehicles did not arrive as scheduled due to supply chain issues. But both agencies have set targets for 2026 for a reduction in the percentage of vehicles that have exceeded their useful life balance, as they expect these vehicles to arrive within this year. MWTA expects level targets on their automobiles and vans, as no vehicles are expected to reach their useful life balance within this year. Next slide, please. CADA and the MWRTA expect no change in their non-revenue vehicles, as no vehicles are expected to reach their ULB during this timeframe. Next slide, please. And CADA and the MWRTA each have one facility, and they expect that facility to remain above a 3 on the term scale. Next slide, please. So several regional agencies work with the transit agencies to support asset improvement. MassDOT, through its capital investment plan, the CIP, allocates federal dollars to programs that support MBTA and RTA asset improvement. The Boston Region MPO, as many of you are aware, considers MBTA and RTA investment for TIP funding. And recently, the MPO has funded CNG procurement for the MWRTA, upgrades to the Blandon Hub, vehicle replacement and facility modernization for CADA, and several station modernizations for the MBTA, such as the Natick Center Station, which fully reopened this past summer. And again, for more detailed information, please consult the memo attached to the meeting materials. Next slide, please. MPO staff requests that the MPO board move to support the staff recommended set of fiscal year 2026 transit asset management targets. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana and Angela. Any questions from the board on this? Lynn Diggins.
No questions, just a statement, and then maybe I can make the motion, you know.
Okay.
So the last sentence, of the memo I thought was very good, and that it says, that, we will work with DOT, and the various entities, to make sure that our transit plans and programs, will make this state of good repair better for them. I would like for us to go into that a little bit more detail at some point in time and break that down, because I think that could really impact maybe some of the criteria that we have. Today isn't a day for it, but I just wanted to flag that and maybe even make a request, meaning that that we have a discussion about that at some point. So that's it. But no, this is really great, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Since there are no questions and you have yourself unmuted, can you go ahead and make the motion?
I'll make the motion to accept these targets, the TAM targets.
Thank you, Eric Barassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric Barassa with MAPC. I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
Certainly. David Muller,
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd, here.
Try that again. Michael O'Dowd, yes.
Cute. John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski, once again, Hannah Switlikowski for the vote. No problem. I will return. Will Palmer,
Will Palmer, yes.
Lydia Housley,
Leah Housley, yes.
Chris Osgood,
Osgood, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Yes.
Tom O'Rourke,
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski, the motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Federal Fiscal Year 2026 to 30 Transportation Improvement Program Tip Amendment number 3. Adriana Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning again, everybody. Today's presentation covers the third amendment to the FFY's 2026 to 2030 Transportation Improvement Program. Next slide, please. And the following one, thank you. So Amendment 3 only addresses federal fiscal year 2026. First, we have a new federal design earmark for the Chris Walsh Trail in Framingham. Next, we have a few cost increases in the statewide highway program. Then we have 2 cost increases on FFY 2026 regional target projects in their final design stages. Then we have requests for additional funding in FFY 2026 for 3 design projects, 2 of which were funded in the FFY 2025 design pilot. We have 4 delays of regional target projects out of FFY 2026. And lastly, we have several fill-in projects which MPO staff are requesting to be funded in FFY 2026 to resolve the surplus in that year, including transit projects from all 3 transit agencies headquartered in the Boston region and a joint bike share support project led by MAPC. Next slide, please. More details on all of the amendment items are laid out in the meeting materials, as are the project descriptions, scores, and maps for the new projects. Next slide, please. Beginning with the earmark discretionary program, we have the programming of a federal design earmark for the Chris Walsh Memorial Trail in Framingham for $3,750,000. This project was awarded design funding as part of the FFY 2025 design pilot. Next slide, please. Next, changes to the statewide highway program. We have the guide and traffic sign replacement on a section of Route 2 from Harvard to Concord, the limits of which are partially also in the Montechusett MPO. The preliminary estimate provided at the time of PRC approval inadvertently reflected only the anticipated office estimate costs and did not include contingencies. So the cost is set to increase from about $734,000 to about $1.8 million. Next, a bridge replacement project in Revere, the Revere Beach Parkway over Broadway, is set to increase from $16.1 million to $18.7 million, due primarily to the addition of environmental items, lighting, electrical design, and traffic control measures. Lastly, the Norwell, Pembroke, and Marshfield bridge replacement over the North River is set to increase from $52 million to $126 million after the bridge hydraulic analysis revealed the need for a different type of foundation. And as a reminder, there is more detail covered in the meeting materials if you are curious. Next slide, please. Next, we have two regional target projects with cost increases, and both of these projects are in their final design stages and have cost increases based on plans, specifications, or estimates, or PS&D submissions. These projects include the Peabody multi-use path construction of the Independence Greenway, with an increase of about $4 million, bringing the total cost to about $23.3 million, and the Linfield Rail Trail construction from Ford Avenue to Nichols Lane, with a cost increase of about $72,000, bringing the total cost to $5.9 million. Next slide, please. Next, we have three design projects with cost increases. First, the Holliston improvements at the intersection of Route 16 and Whitney Street and approaches. As a reminder, this project was awarded $250,000 as part of the FFY 2025 project design pilot, and an additional $350,000 are requested in FFY 2026 to accommodate higher than expected design costs. Next, the Sherburne reconstruction of Route 27 and Route 16. This project was awarded $900,000 as part of the FFY 2025 project design pilot, and an additional $887,550 of funding in FFY 2026 are requested to accommodate the higher than expected design estimate. Lastly, the Marblehead Border to Boston Trail Design Project was funded through an earmark in FFY 2025 for $175,000, and an additional $125,000 of funding in FFY 2026 in the Regional Target Program this time are requested to accommodate additional design costs. Next slide, please. Next, we have delays out of FFY 2026 due to readiness. First, the Belmont Community Path, Belmont component of the Mass Central Rail Trail Phase 1, will be proposed for funding in FFY 2027. I will note that the cost has increased from what shows on the screen of $27 million to $48.7 million. Next, the Boston improvements on Boylston Street will be proposed for funding in FFY 2031, as its latest design milestone is a pre-25% submission. Next, the Woburn intersection reconstruction at Route 3 will be proposed for funding in FFY 2027. And lastly, Hingham's improvements on Route 3A is currently funded across FFYs 2026 and 27, and it will be proposed for funding in FFY 2025 in its entirety. Next slide, please. And lastly, we have 6 projects proposed for fill-ins in 2026. As a reminder, more information on these projects, including project scores, maps, etc., can be found in the project descriptions attached to today's meeting materials. These 6 projects comprise all of the scored projects submitted to the MPO staff for funding consideration in FFY 2026 this winter. Beginning with CADA and MWRTA, we have 2 CADA projects, the CADA Access for All and Cape Ann Dialysis Transportation projects. These are requesting partial funding in FFY 2026 because these programs operate on the state fiscal year instead of the federal fiscal year. The board voted to include these projects in the FFY 2027 scenario 2 weeks ago, and this is just the 2026 portion of that. Next, we have the MWRTA's procurement of compressed natural gas vehicles. This is a continuation of a past TIP project funded through Amendment 10 of the FFY 2025 to 2029 TIP. Next slide, please. We have two MBTA projects. These are the two projects that the MBTA requested be funded in FFY 2026. First, the Symphony Station project, which will construct new elevators and accessible features at Symphony Station on the Green Line. $30 million of funding is requested for 2026, and $5.6 million will be proposed for 2027. The next project is the Downtown Crossing Vertical Transportation Improvements Phase 2, another accessibility-focused project. This will construct new elevators and make transferring between the red and orange lines more accessible. $15 million of funding is requested for FFY 2026. Next slide, please. And the very last project is an MAPC proponent Blue Bikes expansion project. This project includes 17 stations across 6 municipalities and 1,500 e-bikes across the entire system. This will support MAPC's effort to electrify the Blue Bike system. The funding request is for $5,944,000. Next slide, please. The MPO staff request that the board release Amendment 3 for 21-day public comment period beginning on Friday, March 20th and ending on Friday, April 10th. And with that, I will open up the floor for discussion and questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Adriana. Any questions? Because MassDOT has some proposals to make, but are there questions first? Eric Barassa.
Yeah, just one clarifying point on the Blue Bikes proposal there. None of those funds go to MAPC. We're just doing this on behalf of the municipalities. I just want folks to know that we pass all those funds. We help to facilitate those contracts, but all those funds get passed through to the municipalities. And then Adriana, just one question. What are the projects that are proposing to be removed again?
Sure. If you wouldn't mind going back a couple slides. This one. So these are proposed to be delayed to either 2027 or 2031, depending on the readiness status. These 4 projects.
And so essentially, these are being proposed to move out. What is that total?
The total out of FFY 2026. I can't do the math off the top of my head, but
just add these 4 numbers up, right? So it's 27.
Yeah.
10, 4. Okay, got it. I can do that quick. And then everything else that you were proposing was basically backfilling that in.
Not everything else. So only the fill-in projects. So the following 6: the MBTA, CADA, and WRTA, and MAPC projects. The other projects are not related to the surplus.
Right, but did they equal this amount? Is my question.
Not quite exactly. I think there's about $2 million of surplus left over in FFY 2026, but yes, it's close.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Lynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a question about the timing of this amendment. Does it have to be done now? Because I just kind of feel that our hand is getting forced.
Well, I think so this is teeing up decisions that we're going to try to make in the 27 thing that happens right after this, right?
Yeah.
So if for some reason I think staff believes, and I think I agree with them, that you should do the amendment first, take care of what can't go in 26, because then all those projects become subject to being amended into 27 into the new tip, right? This is clearing out the last tip and then making changes into the new tip. But in a minute, I'm going to talk about something we think we can actually deliver that shouldn't be delayed, and that will have a ripple effect into the 27 discussion we had, assuming it doesn't get delayed, would have a ripple discussion into the 27 amendment or 27 discussion we're going to have in a minute, right? So the concept is you need to clear out 26 before you talk about what to do in 27, because what you do in 26 has impacts with what you do in 27.
I understand that. It's just that and I guess the process is getting formalized a bit, and please forgive me, Brad, if I'm like violating what you said that you wanted us to like not do, last time, but I'm really trying to stay within the spirit of like we can have at least intellectual commitments to moving forward. But the reason I bring this up is that and this came up in the last Tipper meeting. It's like I'm just having some problems with moving stuff into 31, because I really feel that we should kind of like make sure that we have some space in 31 for new projects, and so anytime that we are just kind of mucking with I take that back to work. Just anytime we're adjusting things, that tie us down. I just have a few qualms about, but I understand. And so thanks for making the case. Go ahead. That's it. Thank you.
Adriana, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, Lynn, this amendment, while Adriana talked about what the proposal will be for these projects that are delayed,
right?
This amendment actually doesn't program those delays. This amendment is just cleaning up 26, which is the fiscal year we're in. We have to get advertised projects out the door. And then while we all, like, staff says that Woburn is going to be delayed into 27 or 28, whatever the answer was. That's if the amendment, if the discussion we're having next happens as proposed by staff. So this actually doesn't bind anything other than making sure that the 26 projects that can be delivered are fully funded, and the projects that can't be delivered are not included in 26, so they have to be discussed for 27. Is that right?
Thank you.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I now feel much better. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. So now we've got this up on the screen. I'm going to ask Mike O'Dowd to talk in a minute and probably make a motion. But so MassDOT and the MBTA are now confident that we can deliver Belmont in the year it is programmed, okay, in FY26. My understanding is the reason it was delayed was there were some unresolved comments on the design that are internal to MassDOT and the MBTA. We have worked really hard since this was identified by staff appropriately, okay, for delay. We've worked really hard internally to get this project moving again and get those comments resolved. We believe it can be delivered in 26. The MBTA believes it can be delivered in 26. We're going to make a motion to leave it in 26 and actually probably increase its costs, but we have to have a discussion about how to increase its costs when that time comes. Also, because as Adriana said, it's now a $48.7 million project. Also, it is a 2-year construction season, so if we can't fit all those 48.7 into this amendment, we will, identify projects to come out and fund it over 2 years. Michael Dowd, can you talk about anything I've missed or clarify for people, like the status of this project, that we are confident?
We are. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And yes, to your point, that we have been working very closely with the MBTA to ensure that we can deliver this in fiscal year 26, as you mentioned. There has been significant amount of engagement and interaction with all members over at the MBTA to ensure that the structural adequacy of the new underpass that's being placed, as well as the construction sequencing and the staging and how we're intending to construct this, all which gives us confidence that we'll be able to deliver this in federal year 26.
Thank you, Mike. So, I need to ask the MBTA something, and this really isn't fair, but can you go to the MBTA projects, please? Thank you. Now go to the MBTA ones. Yeah. So Sandy, I think Sandy's the MBTA rep today. We need to fit some of this project, this 48.7 million, into this amendment. I think our proposal is to not do Symphony in 26, but remember, it will open up funding in 27, okay? Because currently in 27, the entire Belmont project has been moved to 27. So we would, when we get to 27, propose funding Symphony in 27 instead of in 26. But Sandy, if for some reason you think the T would rather defer downtown crossing to 27, we can cover this cash flow over 2 fiscal years. I don't want to, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, Sandy, and this is just to get an amendment out and we can adjust it during public comment. But I don't want to speak for the T without letting you speak on behalf of the T. Sandy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We've discussed this internally. As you mentioned, there's been extensive ongoing coordination about this set of issues. Really appreciate MassDOT's and everyone else's partnership on this. We don't think it impacts the timeline for either of these projects to move them however we need to. And if we need more detail on that, Glenn Geiler is here from our capital program planning team and can speak to more detail. But we are happy for either of these, however staff and the chair judge it to work best to be moved into 27.
Thank you, Sandy. Adriana, did you have a question before I call on Will?
Oh, yes, just to note that if we would have to move not just Symphony because of the cost increase on Belmont.
Yeah, but Adriana, I can fund Belmont over 2 years
Okay.
because it's a 2-year construction season, so I can fund it over 2 years under advanced construction.
Understood.
Right? Like if it worked out easily just to affect the T projects and not anybody else's, I'd probably try to do it all in 1 year, but I don't think it does. But thank you. Will?
Sandy may have addressed this, but I do just want to confirm what impact on basically these projects being open to the public, these changes would make for both projects. Sandy, it sounds like the T believes that either way, the timelines are going to be the same.
That is my understanding. I am not an expert on these things, but that is what I have gotten from our folks who are working on it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So in a minute, I'm going to ask Michael Dowd to make a motion to leave Belmont in 26, funded at its total cost of 48.7, but only include 30 million of it in FY 26. And that will obviously make us include the remainder in 27 when we get to that. And I think that's all I need for this motion, right? So, but before we do that, I'm going to let everybody have their questions asked. And I want to again stress, staff did absolutely nothing wrong. Staff did what they were supposed to do. This project was stalled, and they identified it as stalled, and they followed the policy. And part of what, for our purposes, the policy does is not only does it identify stalled projects, but sometimes focuses people on get the project unstalled. So I think everything has worked here well, and I just want to make sure everybody understands. This has nothing to do with staff making a mistake. Staff did exactly what they were supposed to do. Eric Barassa.
Yeah, thank you, David. If we keep Belmont in 26 and fully, fund it, but then advance can construct it, so some of the funding goes into 27. Do we then? I haven't done all the math. Do we then have enough in 26 for everything else that has been proposed as part of this amendment?
Yes. So what we're doing is on this screen, we will take $30 million from Symphony out and put $30 million for Belmont in. That leaves, when we get to 17, all of Belmont is currently in the draft 27 recommendation from staff.
Right.
So for Belmont, all we'll need is 18.7 in 27. And that will open up a slot for Symphony 30 million to just slide in. Okay. All we're doing is making sure that the project can be advertised this year, gets advertised. It is a 2-year construction project, and the money will work out as we get to the 27 step discussion. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Jim Nee.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick clarifying question. As we're talking about Symphony being moved out of 26, we were not talking about Symphony being moved into 27 as a foregone conclusion. This is a fill-in project alongside other fill-in projects, and this project will be considered alongside those for inclusion in 27, possibly, correct?
Absolutely. And that discussion, I should clarify this too for everybody. The fill-in project discussion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adriana or Tegan, or Ethan, is going to happen at our April meeting. Okay. So After we do this, the next item on the agenda is the highway program for this 27 tip. That's where we'll discuss cost increases. We'll discuss what should be funded in what based on the policies. We'll take any amendments. We'll get to a highway decision that will leave money unprogrammed that we will then discuss in April, first meeting in April. I think it's on the 6th in April to talk about which of the fill-in projects. There's, I think, 2 highway fill-in projects and a bunch of transit projects from the RTAs and the MBTA, and we will discuss all of them at that time. Taken?
Sorry, I think that one thing that we might have to confirm, David, and please work with me here, is that by programming Belmont for a partial amount in 2026, because the projects in the TIP have to be fully funded, and again, maybe Adriana and Ethan will adjust this a little bit, but because the projects have to be fully funded, it commits this board to funding the increase to the project as well in 2027. So it is making a decision now that then still would affect the 2027 onward tip, I think is the other issue. I see Adriana nodding. So I just want to be very transparent with the board, and our staff, need to know that, because we will have to assume that it is part of the 2027 tip if we make this motion now and it passes with the amendment.
Excellent. Jay Monty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think I am happy with the outcome of this. That keeping it in 26 and freeing up a little bit of funding in 27. That is a good outcome. I do want to point out, I mean, that's a big cost increase at the last minute after 100% comments, and still a lot of trust that in the next 4 or 5 months this will be out to bidding contracted, right? Like, walk me through that some more. Somebody walk me through that. It just seems like a lot just got thrust upon us, and we're here to trust that. And I want to, because I think it's a good project and I think the outcome's right. But that's a big one to just kind of land on us so quickly.
I think I'm going to rely on Adriana or Ethan to talk about the cost increase, because I believe this is a cost increase that was discussed probably at Tipper, because it is again recommended for programming with that cost increase in the 27 amendment. Ethan?
Yes, so while this project being Belmont Community Path was discussed at the TIP committee meeting, we do not actually have a full cost breakdown on the drivers on it. So we did discuss how the project has evolved over different design stages, but in terms of specific elements to the cost increase, we can't answer that at this time.
Let me ask Mike O'Dowd if he can answer. Mike, can you answer? Or do you need to bring back some information into the next meeting?
No, I'd be happy to, Mr. Mueller.
Thank you,
It was really the cost increase is really relevant to the underpass construction that's going to be undertaken to ensure that we have cross connectivity for all the pedestrians and cyclists and the users under the tracks. And that's where we saw the greatest cost increase. There was approximately about a $20 million increase in the overall cost as a result of our proposal to construct the underpass.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't remember, we're building an underpass under the Fitchburg commuter rail line, right? That's an expensive undertaking, and I believe this one even includes, I think, PTC cabling that we have to make sure we're accounting for. So it's an engineering marvel for those of us who aren't engineers.
Yeah, and I totally appreciate that. Yeah, I totally appreciate that. I just like all things, there's a time crunch and a big change, and I just want to make sure everybody's confident that the outcome is going to be that. Okay.
Thank you, Jay. John?
Thanks, David. I just had a fast question about the Woburn project, which was originally scheduled to be put off to the 2027 tip. And if this amendment and the different amounts are shifted around as we've been proposed, is this going to leave enough money in the 2027 tip for the Woburn project, which is at 100% design?
So this amendment will not, other than this amendment already proposes delaying Woburn and not into 27, because that discussion will happen at our next agenda item. But this amendment that we're proposing now to this amendment has no impact on where Woburn ultimately gets delivered, what year. That discussion will happen in the next agenda item, but this isn't taking any funding that is otherwise allocated to Woburn.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Lynn?
Thanks very much, Chair. So we'll be discussing, cost increases and maybe some policy towards cost increases in the next agenda item.
So we are definitely discussing policy, cost increases.
Yeah.
I think staff will remind us all about our existing policy on cost increases and what the Tipper Committee did. I don't know if we're going to have additional discussion about cost increases and policy changes we might want to make in the future. Some of us might want to, so we'll see how it goes.
Okay, just because I do want to discuss more about the cost increase. It's a good. I understand the reasons for it, but ultimately, I think we need to discuss who bears the cost. Especially if we're going to be good, just really try to maintain the integrity of each year's cohort of projects. So, all right, we'll take it up to some other time. Thank you very much,
Eric.
So I'm happy to make the motion, unless others have a question. Have more.
Yeah, is there any other questions at this time? So actually, let me ask Adriana and Ethan a question, or one of them, or Tegan. So I heard Tegan's comment. Does this amendment have to include all of the money for the Belmont Path? In other words, if we do the split funding, do we need to put the other 17.5 million or whatever it adds up to be? 18.7, I guess 18.7 million in 27 in this amendment?
I don't think it has to go in the amendment. Again, Ethan can correct me if I'm wrong, but because we cannot partially fund a project, we are de facto committing to funding the cost increase. And again, Ethan, feel free to add something.
I'll take your word for it, Adriana. Derek Schuster, do you have something you need to say on this?
Yeah, I was just going to say that as far as federal regulatory rules and to accommodate the amendment you're proposing, Mr. Chair, I think you could just do nothing with Belmont today, and Symphony as part of the amendment also do nothing with. If that's the motion you want to have, and we can come up with a fiscally constrained scenario for the active version that aligns with the 27 scenario that's discussed at a forthcoming meeting. So it gives everyone time to evaluate the funding and then just align both tips.
Yeah, I understand it, Derek, but my concern is you're putting out an amendment that that you expect is not going right. We will theoretically, if we did that, we'd put out this amendment, but at the same time, we'd be voting a different thing for the 27 tip. And I'd rather give the public the heads up of, hey, we're actually keeping Belmont in by leaving it in the amendment. But thank you.
Okay.
Tom Bent.
Just a question on Belmont on the cost increase. Yep. Does that also include major shuttle costs while the commuter rail is down? If you could clarify that a little bit, because I think it was discussed in the TIPA, which is about 7 million for that. Is that right?
Yeah. So Michael Dowd, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that so number one, the shuttle costs aren't defined yet. Okay, because we're still working on means and methods of whether you close how the closure would be accommodated. There will be some limited closure in order to tunnel under the line. Okay, limited, and how that is accomplished is still being discussed between the MBTA and MassDOT. So nobody can actually give you a good estimate of the shuttle costs. But as part of the project, the shuttle costs will be funded by MassDOT, not by the T. And I don't believe they're part of the construction cost. I think they're an add-on that we do afterwards. But Mike, can you clarify if I'm wrong?
That is correct. Mr. Mueller, we will be adjusting those costs once we have a full confidence in agreement between MBTA and ourselves as to how we will be minimizing the disruption and minimizing any of the diversions associated with the work.
Right, but we would not ask the MPO to fund the cost of those diversions.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, for that clarification.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions before I call on Eric to make a motion? John, your hand's up. Do you have a question, or is it just still up from the last time?
Sorry, didn't put it down. Thanks.
No worries. Eric, can you make a motion to remove Symphony and program and leave Belmont in at a $30 million cost with a definition of the total project cost, which I think is 48.7?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to amend the proposal for tip amendment 3 as presented by staff today to remove the Symphony project, keep the Belmont bike path project at a amount of 30 million, with an understanding that the remainder will be brought up and discussed on the next agenda item.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you. Motion having been made and seconded, please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd,
Michael O'Dowd, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassi, yes.
Hannes Witlikowski,
Hennis Wilikowski, yes.
Will Palmer,
Will Palmer abstain.
acknowledged. Lydia Housley,
Lydia Housley, yes.
Chris Osgood,
Osgood, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Glenn Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti, I did not see Dennis. Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Christy Orio,
Cristerio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Yes.
Tom O'Rourke,
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
motion carries, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is the 2027 to 2031 TIP draft development. Ethan Lapointe.
Morning, everybody. My name is Ethan Lapointe. I am a transportation planner with Boston Region MPO staff. This next presentation here this morning is to cover into additional detail some of the elements up for consideration as part of the 2027 to 31 TIP. If we can please go on to the next slide. I'll start off with an overview as far as what is available for members to reference during today's presentation. And actually, if we can go on to the next slide as well, we'll also just cover a brief element of the objectives for today's meeting before we do that too. So sort of at the start here, I will mention that the objective for today is not necessarily to have a vote on any specific action regarding the program of projects. Staff are going to be looking to ask the board to review and approve cost increases on 9 different projects that exceed the threshold set back in 2021 under the MPO's TIP project cost policies. Some of those were already alluded to in the presentation that Adriana just covered for the 2026 to 30 program. With that, if we can go on to the next slide and the one after this. This will take us into the materials that are going to be provided for members to reference and others as part of today's presentation. There are 2 programming scenarios on the MPO calendar available for reference here. These are illustrative only. We are not asking the board to approve any of these documents as presented. Rather, the first of these, which is the initial one, is substantially similar to the one that was presented at the March 5th meeting of the MPO board. The difference with this version versus what was presented on March 5th doesn't necessarily have anything to do with new projects being added in. Rather, this is meant to illustrate where projects fall based on proposed readiness updates that have happened since the 5th. I'll get into that a little bit at the next part of my presentation, as there have been a couple projects that have seen some changes around their design milestones these past few weeks. The next one, if we can go on to that next slide, please, is identical to that other scenario. And again, for informational purposes only, shows the net impact of fiscal constraint on the entire program as far as what would happen if the board voted to approve every cost increase that is presented before them today. I will note right at the front that approval of every cost increase on all of these projects does break fiscal constraint on this tip. So this is not an actionable scenario of projects as listed here. It's for informational purposes only. I'll also note that this table includes some additional information besides project cost info. Each of the projects listed in this table are listed with the first year that they were funded in a TIP and what year they were funded under. They also include the current design status for the project, including the shorthand for that, and an assessment of whether or not the project may be at risk to meet that advertising year that is recommended under the MPO's readiness guidelines. It also includes a field that indicates the amount of time that has lapsed since a project last provided a recorded design milestone in MassDOT's project info system. That is one of the metrics that might be used to assess cost risk on a project as well. So again, besides just the cost information listed on these tables, which is the main driver of the discussion here today, there are also a few notes around project readiness as well for each of these projects, and also their tenure on the tip. With that, if we can go on to the next slide, I'll go into a brief summary of public comment that staff have received over the past few weeks since recent MPO meetings. If we can go on the next slide, please. So after over these last few weeks, staff have received a very large volume of comments around the Swampscott Rail Trail project and the construction of the Swampscott Rail Trail. Specifically, we have recorded and responded to a little over 100 of those comments thus far, the vast majority of which are expressing support for the merits of the project. I will note we are still getting more of them. There's a few dozen more, including some letters and other comments we have yet to respond to. So again, it's a little over 100 so far. That number keeps growing by the hour, frankly. I will note as well that there is a letter that was provided with outside of the MPO's posting deadline by the Swampscott Select Board around the project. We have received other written letters about this project from other advocacy organizations and elected officials. However, staff received those less than 48 hours before this meeting, so they are not posted on the MPO calendar. However, we will have those posted in a packet for the April 6th MPO meeting for reference. Again, just in alignment with the operations plan and posting guidelines there for MPO meetings. I will note, like I said, the vast majority of these comments were in support of the trail, usually focusing on the anticipated outcomes from and the merit of funding the project in the first place. The staff response that was circulated yesterday evening to those about 100 or so folks that had submitted comments already was more around the lack of alignment with that project against the MPO's readiness guidelines, specifically the meeting of a minimum pre-25% design threshold or lack thereof in that project's case. So just noting again that there has been overwhelming support from the public around this project. With that, I'll now move into on the next slide, just some updates over the last few weeks. After the March 5th MPO meeting, staff received confirmation from MassDOT around projects that might be candidates for regional prioritization. I will note that the March 5th MPO meeting was not only where we presented initial options for developing the program, but also project scores. Because of the time that when staff received these projects, and also the fact that we are still looking for some additional project information to do so, these next few projects I'm going to get into are not scored. Though if the board would elect to fund them, we would likely try our best to score them after the fact. Without further ado, if we can go on to the next slide, I'll start with the first of the two of them. The first is the Lake Cochituate path in the town of Natick. The project has an estimated cost of about $6.4 million. It is a little bit ahead of where the readiness guidelines would be for a project like this. It's at the plan specifications and estimate stage, or PS&E, and it submitted that on November 4th. That being said, while it is a little bit ahead of the guidelines as written, there are still some outstanding needs as far as Section 4F permits, which usually refers to parks and open space access, and also right-of-way. I will note as well, for both of these two projects, these are already funded in the statewide highway program. This project is currently funded for fiscal 2027 in the statewide program. Therefore, if the board were to consider it for funding in the regional target program, just to sort of show support for the project, it would likely be a good fit and a safe fit for 2027 in the target program. If we can go to the next slide, the second project has a cost estimate about $3.1 million. This is the College Street School Improvements Project in the town of Sharon. This project is at a 25% design, but MassDOT and the town are targeting design public hearing on March 26th. Based on notes that staff received from MassDOT tip readiness days, the right-of-way is progressing smoothly on the project, and MassDOT does not anticipate any significant permitting challenges with executing the project. Based on the design public hearing date for the end of this month, it could be a candidate for fiscal 2029 under MPO guidelines. There's about $10 million in 2029 right now, so this project does fit into there in a manner that any of the new projects the MPO received applications for would not. I will also note that this project, as with the Natick project, is currently fully funded in fiscal 2029, the statewide program for that $3.1 million. So these are just two projects that we recently received confirmation on over the last few weeks as far as interest in regional prioritization there. With that, we can go on to the next slide. This takes us into the main substance of what we're going to be asking the board to review during today's presentation and meeting. If we can go to the next slide. So earlier, I mentioned that there are 9 projects that exceed the cost thresholds set by the MPO back in 2021. Those thresholds were either or both, a $2.5 million increase on a project or a cost increase beyond 10%. Of those 9 projects total, 5 of these were already reported to the MPO board. The first, which was discussed previously, is the Belmont Community Path component of the Mass Central Rail Trail. This project increased between the 75% design and 100% design stage by about 80% in cost to $48.9 million. It's at the 100% comments to design engineer stage right now on the project. The second is the Bridge Preservation Cambridge Street over MBTA project, which at the 25% stage saw a 25.5% increase, about $4 million, up to $20.7 million. Rehabilitation of Washington Street in the town of Brookline has an increase from $27.96 million to $39 million based on, again, MassDOT's estimation for the project, which was something that was mentioned during the committee chair's report earlier in this meeting. That's at the 25 comment stage. Rehabilitation of Essex Street in the city of Lynn has increased from $23.57 million to $33.81 million. That's a 43.5% increase, also based on the 25% stage. And then rehabilitation of Western Avenue has increased from $45.9 million to $68.2 million. Also the 25% comment stage, it's a 48.6 increase. So again, we've already presented these increases to the MPO board previously, but we will be asking the board to review and potentially approve them here today. Excuse me. That being said, over the last few weeks, a couple more increases have been flagged. If we can go on to the next slide. There are 4 more projects here that have seen a couple changes. The first is the improvements on Route 3A from Otis Street and Cole Road, including Summer Street and Rotary. This project's cost in the 26 to 30 tip is $31.95 million. The latest cost estimate for this project, based on the 100% design stage from back in December, is now $35.4 million, which is a 10.8% increase. I will note that we did catch a cost increase on this project, we being MPO staff, a cost increase on this project earlier. In fact, we presented it as such in materials to this board at the March 5th meeting. It was an increase from about $31.95 to I want to say around $32.5 million, which was within the cost threshold, though that number has been modified further up beyond the threshold to $35.4 million on the project. Again, based on that same 100%. Similarly, with the Spot Pond Brook Greenway for the city of Malden, the project has achieved a 25% design back last summer with a resubmission to MassDOT Project Review Committee back in December. The cost estimate that staff are proposing be incorporated in the TIP based on some of these revisions that have happened on the project is an increase of 63.5% to about $8 million on this project. And I will speak briefly to what those changes were. It's mostly around actually reductions in the limits of the project to better align the proposed Spot Pond Brook Greenway connection to the existing Northern Strand path. That's sort of a closer distance there, and also reevaluation of other project elements within the limits. Again, this is a project that moved from a PRC approval back in, I believe, 2022 up to a 25% in 2025. So this is a fairly typical increase for projects moving between those stages. The third project, which I'll actually circle back to on the next slide, is the Boston Street improvements in Salem. For now, I will mention this project has hit a 100% design milestone. and has increased from 25.15 to 28.15 approximately $1 million. That is a 12% increase. More on the design submission later, like I said. And the fourth and final project is a intersection reconstruction at Route 3 Bedford Road and South Bedford Street. This project is at $4.88 million right now based on the 75 estimate. There is a new cost estimate on the project that staff believe is based on a 100% design that will be coming in April. That increase is about $6.17 million, a 26.3% increase. On that note, if we can go on to the next slide, I want to circle back on Salem real quick. If we move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So with the Boston Street Improvements Project in the city of Salem, during readiness days, there was some debate between MPO staff and MassDOT staff as to sort of where the project schedule was at. I will note that where staff and MassDOT sort of agreed on was that 2027 could be deliverable, but given the fact that a 100% design was not received for the project in time for reporting to the board, the first materials that were shown to the board back on March 5th showed this project in federal fiscal 28. Now that the project has a 100% design submission recorded before March, the project is no longer recommended to be delayed to fiscal 28 and is in fact now being reflected in the materials on the MPO meeting calendar for federal fiscal year 2027. So when we get into some of the cost numbers that I'll be covering shortly, there will be some discrepancies versus what we're presenting today and what we presented a few weeks ago. This is one of the main drivers of that change. So this project is now one of 5 projects that under the MPO's readiness guidelines is not recommended for a delay out of its current programming year. I will note though, the 100% design on the project was still overdue by a little bit. And so there may still be some risk to meeting a federal fiscal year 27 add date, though that's the case with, any project has any associated level of risk on meeting design. So as a result, we are still recommending programming it in 27 based on the readiness guidelines. Last project readiness change I want to cover, and this is actually some good news here. If we go on the next slide, one of the other 5 projects not recommended for delay here is the Bruce Freeman bike path construction, phase 3 in the town of Sudbury. Now, back on March 5th, staff presented this project and noted that it was not recommended for delay there, as it actually had already had a 25% design public hearing, making it a good fit for federal fiscal year 2029. Well, this project, which is mostly a rail trail project with minimal structures, wetlands, elements there, submitted a 75% design back on February 25th. And that 75% design not only came in a little ahead, but also has a cost decrease on the project of 17.6% down. Now, this is a somewhat straightforward kind of rail trail project. So as a result, that decrease, while being sizable, is, at least in terms of numbers, a $1.5 million decrease. So it does not necessarily sort of match the extent of the increases we're seeing on larger projects. But the silver lining here is that with this project being a little bit ahead on the readiness guidelines, this could be a strong candidate to accelerate in development of the 2028 to 32 tip if a 100% design submission is sent in by the town by March of 2027. So we are flagging this today for the cost decrease, but this is one that we'll continue monitoring for the possibility of acceleration in the next tip. We are not recommending any changes as far as project and programming year for this tip. So with that, if we can go on to the next slide and the one after it, please. So I want to reiterate some information that's been provided at previous meetings around development of the program. What staff are looking for the board to accomplish as part of today's meeting is to look at intermediate level project decisions to attain fiscal constraint in all 5 tip years. We are asking the board to try and refine the work that was done at the last meeting that the TIP committee has been sort of reviewing further to try to get additional answers on in advance of the April 6th MPO meeting. This is the second to last meeting that we will be bringing these projects to the board to sort of develop a final program of projects. That April 6th meeting, we're hoping to focus on the allocation of unprogrammed balances. In this meeting, we're asking to address the readiness recommendations for each project and also the cost increases there to create the space to sort of do cleanup on April 6th and be a little straightforward there. To that effect, I did want to provide a little bit of additional information for members to reference as part of the decision today. We go on to the next slide, please. I'm going to reiterate, earlier I mentioned that there's a difference in bottom line on program balances versus what was presented on March 5th and what's being presented here today. Based on the program sort of scenario that's available on the MPO calendar without the cost increases, the current unprogrammed balance for each of the 5 federal fiscal years of the 2027 to 31 TIP is $49.16 million in fiscal 27, $89.35 million in fiscal 28, and $9.17 million in fiscal 29. There is in fiscal 2030 about $13.3 million in 2030, and in 31 about $300,000. However, as we noted in previous MPO meetings, with cost increases factored in, the funding in the outer years of the TIP rapidly depletes. We go on to the next slide. This next slide shows what would happen if the MPO board voted to cover all cost increases on these projects. Specifically, the regional target balance in 2027 would decrease from a surplus of $49.16 million to about $29.55 million. Now, 2 notes there. That increase is still well within the surplus, though also the change that was just made on the amendment preceding this is going to make that number look different once we actually do the final math, should the board vote to fund the increase on the Belmont Community Path. So we still need to work that out as far as what that looks like, because that $29.55 million assumed that the full roughly $50 million of Belmont was going to be in fiscal 27. So it's probably more like $60 million now. For fiscal 28, there is about $89.35 million in that year based on project delays, and that is after accommodating most increases. And then because of the Sudbury Bruce Freeman cost reduction, that project actually that year now has about $10.7 million in it, versus the $9.17 million listed previously. Most of the cost increases that came through this year were either on projects the 100% design stage, which is why we're seeing a lot of increases in 27, or they were projects the 25% design stage, which is why in 2030 we see a net cumulative cost increase of about $30.5 million. That takes us into deficit in 2030. So that $13.3 million that was started with would be gone, replaced with $17.17 million. The punchline is that if the board votes to approve every cost increase, the program breaks fiscal constraint, and therefore additional decisions will need to be made to rectify fiscal constraint across each of the TIP years. I will also note, just again to help as far as visual aids for purposes of discussion, on the next slide, as I mentioned earlier, there are 9 projects. If we can go to the next slide, please. There are 9 projects that project cost increases that exceed the threshold set by the 2021 TIP project cost policies, and these require MPO approval to move forward, consistent with the guidelines that were set by the MPO back in 2021. These projects, just as a reminder, are the Belmont Community Path, the bridge preservation for Cambridge Street over the MBTA, the rehabilitation of Washington Street, the rehabilitation of Essex Street, the rehabilitation of Western Avenue in Lynn, the improvements on Route 3 in Hingham, Spot Pembroke Greenway in Malden, Boston Street improvements in Salem, and the intersection at Route 3 and Bedford Road in Woburn. I will also note that we don't need to go to that slide now, but this table that is shown on screen here shows what was presented previously, the current project cost and the proposed new cost with the percent increase, along with design status. Staff also have prepared a few other slides anticipating some other questions. There is a version of this table that for all of these projects shows their lifetime cost increases as well, for folks that might want to see a breakdown as far as which projects have seen the most increases over their lifespans. I'll actually note in a few cases, some of the projects on screen here actually have smaller lifetime percent increases than the sort of percent increase suggested here today. This is because the projects that hold their ad year tend to decrease in cost over time. So that's why we've included that. If we can go one more slide and one after that, please. I want to note just a couple, or reiterate a few things I mentioned earlier. So again, should the board today wish to approve all project cost increases, that will break fiscal constraint in 2030. If the board wishes to approve all cost increases, staff are asking that today they work to resolve the deficit in 2030. There's insufficient funding in federal fiscal year 2031 to try to delay projects out of 2030 into 2031. And if a project's cost increase is not approved, The project proponent must identify the other funds to support the cost difference there, or that project needs to be removed from the TIP as we cannot partially fund projects. And before I pass it back to the chair, I will also note again that we have prepared some additional backup information should the need arise, including lists of either currently proposed projects, new eligible projects meeting the MPO's minimum guidelines. We also have some information as well as far as implications for future TIPs, like what we think the fiscal 2032 program might look like. So just noting that we've tried to anticipate a series of questions around discussion here today. So happily take any of those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. First, I'm going to make a comment and then I'm going to ask you to move back to the slide. As Ethan, as someone who did your job a lifetime ago, that was damn impressive, dude. All right. You covered a lot of information very clearly, step by step. Excellent job as always, but this one was really over the top. Now, can you go back to the slide that shows the impact of all the cost increases and how it breaks for? Thank you. So before we take anything else, I want to note that the city of Boston has recommended, and MassDOT frankly agrees, and will be helping make a motion or possibly making the motion, that we should program the Cambridge Street Bridge project into 28 at its currently existing cost. That's $20.7 million that will move out of, I guess, it will Ethan, correct me if I'm wrong here. It will solve the $17 million deficit in 2030 and is easily accommodated within the surplus that's in 28. Is that correct?
Yes, and actually anticipating that question, if we can move up a few slides, I believe it's maybe 6 more slides or 8. A little more, please. 1 more, please. There. That is what the balance would look like.
Right. And so I want to make clear, we're doing this because of project readiness, not because it solves the problem, but it does solve the problem. And finally, also to Lynn's point earlier, it's not necessarily dispositive of the question of whether we should fund all cost increases. We can still have that discussion, but we do think there's a path forward that fits all the criteria. And you know, I guess I'll start now with this discussion. I think Boston made a very reasoned case in their letter that the Cambridge Street Bridge is different than all our other target projects. It is a bridge preservation project. It's, you know, MassDOT will get it ready. We can guarantee it will be ready in 28. It is very different from every other regional project, and we think it is worthy of moving forward. We'll make that motion at the appropriate time, but I want to let people have discussion about anything they want to have a discussion about on this process today and what Ethan has presented. Eric Barassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that clarification. That was going to be my question about Cambridge Street. And then I think Adriana put in the chat that by keeping Belmont the 30 million in 26, but then assuming we're going to fund the remainder in 27, then that increases the balance in 27 from like 29 to 45.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then, so go back to that other slide, Ethan. The one with the Cambridge. So if we move Cambridge Street into 28, then the new balance for 27 would be likely, you know, because of the Belmont action we took would be like 45, and then 67 in 28, 10 in 29, 10.6 in 29, 6 in 30, and then only 300,000 in 31.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so I should note for the record that when at the appropriate time, MassDOT is also going to make a motion on the Swampscott Rail Trail to keep it in 29, which would take up almost all of the surplus. Okay, but I want to do these things in incremental processes and take individual votes on them, right? And Adriana, can you just again check for me the 27 surplus, because we funded 30 million of Belmont in 27, so I don't understand why the surplus doesn't go up to 59.
It's a bit confusing. It's because it's a little bit hard to explain. So in the meeting materials, we proposed funding about 40 million of Belmont in 27. Now we're only funding 18 million in 27, assuming we cover the cost increase.
Right.
So that's where that difference comes from. It's
Okay.
40
All right,
minus
excellent.
18.
Excellent. Thank you. Lynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Ethan, I'm going to ask you to send the whole board the deck, because I am very much interested in those slides that we didn't see, and it'll take me some time, I'm sure, to digest them, and it may have answers to some of the questions that I have. But one question I'm going to ask now is, does one of those slides show us the cost increases beyond the contingencies that are added when the projects reach the 25% design stage? Because that's kind of programmed in to the cost. It's not, let me rephrase that word. It's not programmed in. It's a cost that we can anticipate that is not included when the projects first go on the tip. And I'm kind of interested, well, I'm very interested in the cost increases that come beyond the contingencies that MassDOT imposes or implements at that stage. So is that in one of those slides?
If I can restate your question, just to make sure I'm answering this right.
Yeah.
Are you asking, is there a graphic that shows sort of this scenario with the anticipated average increase in cost for projects not at the pre-25 or 25% stage? So it just says like a what if case? Because the answer to that is no, if we have that for this presentation.
Okay, all right, fine. Well, that isn't something, that isn't an exact question, but that is something I'd be interested in seeing. But really, what I was asking is even a more complex question. That is, what costs increases are we seeing that are beyond the contingencies that were added when the projects reach the 25% design stage?
Right. So let me take a shot at what I think you're asking.
Yeah.
So I think what Lynn wants to know is there a chart that shows here's what we thought it was going to be when we had no 25. Here's what we thought it would be at 25. Here's what we thought it would be at 85. Because I think what Lynn is trying to get at is at 25, we think we've built in a contingency that should take you to 75. But if it doesn't, that means that either the scope changed or costs went up much more than we expected or whatever. Is that what you're trying to get at, Lynn? As opposed to how often does it change in the tip? When did it change at the project's submissions?
Right. Now you got it. So yeah.
Ethan, is that something you have or you can develop at some point?
I do not have access to that kind of information. So if I had that information, we could look into it. But likely, definitely not today.
Okay.
So what you have is changes in successive tip years for costs.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Sandy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I admit my head is spinning a little bit with all these different scenarios, but I did just want to make sure, given the previous action for 2026, that we're continuing to include the funding for Symphony in 2027 and any scenarios that we're teeing up for voting on at our next meeting.
Right. So today we're on, as I mentioned when Jim Nee raised his question, today we're only voting on the highway program. Okay. So you won't see Symphony in 27, but the cost that is going to be left over in 27 after we vote the highway elements is enough to fund Symphony if indeed the MPO maintains its commitment to Symphony. Other questions? Lydia.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question, but at the right moment, happy to make a motion around Cambridge Street Bridge.
All right. I think you can make that motion now, and then MassDOT will probably second it, and we can take discussion and vote on it.
Thanks very much. Based on the information that's been shared by the project team and the discussion that's been had here today about the Cambridge Street Bridge, both in terms of its readiness, but also its benefit to the overall programming scenario, make a motion to program the Cambridge Street Bridge project and the 2028 federal fiscal year.
Michael Dowd, do you want to second that one?
I will second that one, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Comments, questions, suggestions, or questions on that before we take a vote? Seeing none, motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Muller,
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd,
Michael O'Dowd, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassi, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swilikowski, yes.
Will Palmer,
Will Palmer, yes.
Lydia Housley,
Lydia Housley, yes.
Chris Osgood,
Chris Osgood, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, enthusiastic, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So Ethan, can you put up the slide that you actually had done based on the submission of the letter from Boston, anticipating that we might do this?
That is
Is
this
that it?
slide. Yeah.
That is it. Thank you, Ethan. All right, so MassDOT is going to make a motion on Swampscott Rail Trail, but does anybody else have any other motions they'd like to make before we start again? Seeing none, that you can always make a motion after this. So MassDOT is going to move that we leave Swampscott Rail Trail program in 2029 at its current budget, which fits within fiscal constraint that's on the screen. The reason we're doing this, and again, I want to emphasize that staff did everything exactly as they were supposed to do. And staff just followed our policies and staff did a wonderful job, okay? But from our perspective, part of the reason the policies exist, well, the policies never exist to punish people or projects, right? Part of what it does is it hopes to refocus people on, if your project's important to you, please keep moving it along. You need to take action to move these forward. Swampscott did that, okay? They reached out immediately to MassDOT. They've submitted additional information. We've cleared their bridge type study. We've scheduled an over-the-shoulder review on their 25% for April, which hopefully will expedite 25% submittal. We firmly believe that working closely with the town, we can deliver this project in 29. It's currently in 29. It affects no one else's project. And we'd like to, I think, make the motion. Mike O'Dowd, anything else I should add?
No, you seem to have touched on everything, Mr. Muller.
Thank you. All right. Does anybody have any questions of us before we make this motion? Lynn Diggins.
Yes, and look, I agree with you. Laws were made for people, not people for laws. But at the same time, and I can go along with this because it's not going to affect 29. It's not going to bump anyone out. But I do want us to think about what we would do if keeping it on was going to create problems in one of those latter years, because I think the rationale for why we need to delay a project that has been on the tip for a very long time, we need to be able to apply that rationale to other projects that may now get like that fire in their belly and go, hey, we need to move things. I think we have processes in place to prevent what we are seeing with projects that have been on the tip, for a very long time from happening again. But maybe a few, and we just need to think it through. It's kind of like my policy making thing that came when I was on a select board. So that's it. It's just a comment. You don't really need to respond to it. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Eric?
Yeah, David, thank you, and I'm glad to hear this update, and it was good to hear from the town that there's been progress made. I would just say that just message to the town and to, the consultant. I know the consultant spoke today, like, full steam ahead, like really, really work to meet these milestones. Keep pushing on this. It seems like, it took sort of the fear of this project getting kind of bumped off to kind of get some like action going. So keep working, keep pushing it forward. But happy that we can keep it in 29. And thank you, for all the staff at MassDOT for really, doing work more recently to really evaluate the readiness of it.
Thank you. Tom Bent.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My concern, well, I feel like this is another great project, right? There's no doubt about that. But, staff, this board, and SIPA committee worked very hard to come up with these readiness guidelines. And it just seems like, one of the first times we're starting to implement it, we're bypassing it. So I have a concern with that. I mean, looking at the guidelines, it looked like normally it would be, it could go into 31. The problem is there's no money in 31, right? So it's my concern. There's been a lot of work on this for over a long period of time. I was on a committee 5 years ago that talked about, working on these readiness guidelines. We kind of give everyone a grace period over that period of time. And last year, with all the difficulties we had with putting that tip together, we said the grace period is over, and then, here we are once again, going to make an exception to the guidelines. So that's just my concern. It's not the project. I think it's a great project, but again, and then I'm worried about, when I look at the cost on this, where is that cost really going to go? I haven't seen a lot of information on this as far as when was this last cost put forward, where are we going to be in, 29, with that cost, that type of thing. And then the whole readiness piece of it, we're still not at 25%, but that's just a little bit of frustration. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Darlene Wynn.
Hi there. No, I was actually, I appreciate everybody. I don't know if you heard Chairman Mueller before. I was speaking on behalf of the mayor who was in support of the motion that MassDOT has just made. I was ready to second your motion, but I think there's some other comment, but I do appreciate the comments coming from everybody in terms of, trying to abide by the guidelines. But I think it's important also in some cases to have some flexibility and be able to evaluate under certain situations. So I appreciate the opportunity to revisit this.
Thank you, Darlene. Jay Monty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, let me say I'm really glad we can find a way to move this project forward without affecting other projects on the tip. I think it's also worth pointing out how difficult it is to remove a project from the tip. None of us want to do it. Like, I don't think anybody on this board wants to hurt our fellow community member and remove a project. And I'm glad that we can, at the end of the day, find that energy to move this forward. I wish we could have found that energy maybe a little sooner, but I think we all, the process and the readiness guidelines, fully support the effort and Jen's work, the committee's work. I think it's great, but there are realities, right? I think none of us, whether you're MassDOT or a board member or the T, want to see a project get removed. And I do wish we could have resolved these things a little sooner. But glad to see we have a good result at the end.
Thanks, Jay. John.
Thanks, David. This is kind of like taking the green line into Park Street. You're all set to go, and then you hit that curve, and all the sparks and squeaking and squealing, and you have to put up with that. I just had a question when the resident from Swampscott was speaking about the conservation concerns, and if we is there a way that we can balance that readiness, because it's not really a construction part, it's not really a fiscal part, but it's a very important part of getting everything approved. And is that going to be ready by in 2 years, or is this something that's going to drag on? We didn't really seem to address that concern today. So,
right. So all I can tell you, John, is MassDOT believes we can get this project ready by 29. I can't guarantee that the Conservation Commission will do what we think is going to happen. Right, it does have wetlands implications. Many of our projects do. We and the town believe that this can get permitted and designed and delivered by 29.
Okay.
Thank you. So is there, is iPhone 2 a board member? Because we're
Yes, I'm
actually,
sorry. I
thank you,
came back
Dennis.
and I came back in the
Excellent.
meeting. This is Dennis, and I forgot to rename myself. Sorry about that.
No worries. Thanks, Dennis.
I agree with just what everybody has said so far. What I would suggest that we do is that we stay close to these projects a little bit, so that maybe in the fall we get an update from what's going on with Swampscott. And any project that we kind of relax the rules so that we keep them on our radar, so that we don't, we don't revisit it just once a year, so that they have wake up calls, but that we have wake up calls maybe numerous times until we feel that it's really back on track. So that would be my suggestion.
I think that's an excellent idea, Dennis, either through the committee or through the MPO itself or through the Tipper committee or both. So yeah, let's let staff work on figuring that out, but I think that's a great idea. Any other comments before we take a motion? Seeing none, Mike O'Dowd, can you move this project for me?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion to keep the Swampscott Rail Trail in fiscal year 29.
Thank you. Darlene Nguyen, I believe you said you wanted to second this one?
Yes, I will second the motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd,
Michael O'Dowd, yes.
Don Romano,
Don Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassi, yes.
Hannah Slitwikowski,
Ernest Wulikowski, yes.
Will Palmer,
Will Palmer abstain.
Lydia Housley,
Lydia Housley, yes.
Chris Osgood,
Chris Osgood, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Biggins,
I'm going to abstain. Thank you.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bett,
Tom Bent, no.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, abstain.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Yes.
Tom O'Rourke,
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
19 yeses. Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other comments, questions, issues, discussion, debate on the presentation so far? Because I believe, Ethan, you want us to vote this now at the end of our discussion. You'd like us to vote the highway portion of the tip. Is that correct? I mean, I think we should, but it's up to you.
If we can go back a few slides, we still need to cover the cost increases.
That would be great, Ethan. Thank you so much.
We can go back one more, please. Thanks. These are them.
Did we lose David? Okay, David?
I'm back. Sorry. My computer is giving me real serious trouble. So, Ethan, what would you like us to do here?
We're looking for a decision by the MPO as to whether or not it would want to cover all or some of these cost increases consistent with the 2021 cost policy.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on these cost increases or want to have a discussion on one or all of them? So let me just so I'm going to support all these cost increases, frankly, but I do think it's an issue we need to grapple with, much like we grappled with readiness last year. I think cost increases, Ethan, if I say anything that's not correct, please do correct me after I finish with my spiel. I, I believe we have a policy about cost increases, and I believe staff does everything appropriate under that policy. But I feel like that policy has never resulted in us not approving a cost increase. And maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but I also think it sort of just makes the policy maybe immaterial. So I'd like to, once we're through the tip process, maybe ask the tipper committee, much like they did under Tom Bent's motion the last time, to when they addressed the policy on readiness, just to think more about how to make this more of a real discussion point at the MPO, right? Like I share everybody's concern of you don't want to, you don't want to pull the plug on a project at the goal line, but I do think we need to have this discussion in more detail. Probably not today, unless anybody wants to have this discussion today about an individual project or a group of projects. Ethan, did I say anything that was wrong or incorrect? Not wrong.
I think that's an accurate assessment of the last at least 4 tips I've been doing this. So
Thank you, Ethan. Lynn?
I would love to have a discussion about all of them, but not at 2 hours and 44 minutes into the meeting. And one thing that became apparent at the last Tipper meeting was that issue where we program things in the 5th year, at a cost that we get at pre 25%, and then when we get to the 25%, there is contingency that's added that kind of boosts the cost. Roughly 20%. I'm just saying roughly. We can handle that. If we program the money's in the correct way in that 5th year, and so that's one policy thing. And then anything other than that, we have to really examine the reasons for the costs, and then who's going to bear those costs. And we need to hold each year's cohort of projects, like the money that we have for that year needs to be sacrosanct, and no other project intrudes on those costs, unless there's some compelling reason, and that would be where we would examine the cost increases and then determine like who's going to bear the cost of them. I don't think we have enough time, to have that discussion now to like kind of figure out like where are these cost increases coming from and who should bear them. And so the easy thing to do is, as we've done other years, is just like take them and then just kind of hope that the tip holds together from year to year, so that we can get through these meetings in something less than 4 hours. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Chris Diorio?
Thanks. Yeah, I know it's late in the meeting, but I wonder if could we just get a quick recap on why the costs are so much higher for that Belmont path?
Yeah, so the cost increase is related to the need to tunnel under the Fitchburg Rail Trail. And there was a lot of debate back and forth between the designer and MassDOT and the MBTA about the appropriate tunnel configuration. And part of that issue then became there's a PTC cable that adds additional cost into the mix. So this is it is a unique engineering problem that we have to put a bike path under an active commuter rail line, and that increased these costs. But Michael Dowd, if there's anything else that I missed, please do respond again.
You are correct, Mr. Molo. That is accurate.
Thank you. Any other questions on this issue? I see. Oh, Megan Roach.
Thank you. Also, hopefully a quick question on Belmont, just as I'm making sure I have the understanding of this correctly. Is it standard that the MPO funds not cover transit diversion, or is that just for this specific project? Or am I not understanding that correctly?
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, so I and again, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. I think typically we do not use federal construction dollars to cover the cost of transit diversions. And so we don't expect the MPO to fund those costs. Is that right, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, that's a standard policy, not just for Belmont. those costs are covered by MassDOT typically.
Thank you.
Yep. Tom Bent.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I agree with Len. I'd love to have a conversation about cost increases, but I don't think today is the right day to do it. I think we could spend the whole day on this. As you know, over the years, I've questioned whether or not the MassDOT 4% is adequate, because it doesn't feel like it is any longer. But also, as far as, again, it's another policy that we're put in place that staff's trying to work around to create, these different scenarios and things for us. And then we kind of pull the rug out for them. So I'm just concerned about, we spend time coming up with these policies. I think it's time, because what we're seeing even here is we really gotta kind of concentrate on where we're going to go with this and how we're going to deal with this. But also so that proponents and consultants and everyone else for these projects understand that, all because it's something is on the tip doesn't mean it's always going to stay on the tip, especially when we see, huge increases in cost. But more of again, frustration. We were hoping, I think, with some of the changes we've made over the last couple of years, this would stop happening, but it hasn't yet. But I'd love to have a meeting just to talk about this stuff.
Excellent. Other comments from MPO members? Seeing none. Rich, we're running really late, so I'm not calling on the public at this time.
You are or you are not?
I am not, unless
it was super. It was just super quick, Mr. Chairman. Just
very,
very
ahead,
quick.
Rich.
And as you know, some of the projects that have increases were projects I've been involved with, and I just hope that the MPO and the committee and everybody else is looking at these things. These projects are not increasing in value necessarily because of scope creep, but just because of the cost of things. That 4%, that's a federal highway thing. They allow 4% inflation. But a lot of these increases are just due to what's going on. I can assure you that this year, hot mix asphalt is going to be tremendously expensive, given that's what's going on in the world right now. So I just hope the MPO is looking at these things not as scope creep, but just as it's the price of doing business these days. So thank you for letting me comment.
Yep. Any other comments on this issue? If none, I think Ethan would like a motion to include all of these cost increases in the draft highway element. Can I get a motion in a second on that, please? Eric Barassa.
I'll make a motion to approve all the cost increases as presented today.
Thank you. Lynn Diggins. Lynn, you're on mute still.
Sorry about that. So Rich's comment got me to a second on this. Okay, so I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Motion having been made and seconded, please call the roll.
Certainly. David Moeller.
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd.
Michael O'Dowd is yes.
John Romano.
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee.
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee.
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski.
Hannah Switlikowski, yes.
Phil Palmer.
Phil Palmer, yes.
Lydia Housley.
Lydia Housley, yes.
Chris Osgood. Calling on Chris Osgood.
Chris Osgood, yes.
Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin.
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins.
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute.
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent.
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach.
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti.
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen.
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
John Strauss.
John Strauss, yes.
Christy Iorio.
Mr. Iorio, yes.
Rachel Benson.
Yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And consistent with the discussion we just had, I'm going to ask the Tipper Committee to take the issue of cost increase policy up again. After the tip process is done, and after Ethan and Adriana have a chance to decompress, I'd like them to take it up sometime in the summer. I'll leave that up to Jen and staff to figure out, but I really do think this is the next item we need to address as a committee. What else, Ethan? You need us to, are we ready? Wait, Ethan, is the next thing to vote on the highway element?
By highway element, do you mean the statewide list of program projects?
No, I mean the regional target list of highway projects that was presented and amended today. Are we at a point where we're ready to vote on that?
Oh, is it in the amendment to the 2630 tip?
No, I mean like what we've just done, the 27 phase 2. Do you want to vote on 27? This is phase 2, right?
This is phase 2, so I think so. I
Okay.
believe I may already have what I needed, but
Okay.
if
All right. So yes. So you have everything you need, including the amendments that were made and the vote to keep the cost increases. Let me just ask anybody, is there any other discussion and or amendment anyone else would like to make to the list? Dennis, Jean, Betty?
Yeah, no amendment, just a general comment. I'm just going to reiterate what I said last time about regional equity. We have a lot of moving parts going in and out and around and about. I just want to make sure that at next meeting that we have a slide or two about regional equity and how all these numbers kind of match up for that topic, if we could.
Can you make that happen, Ethan?
yeah, I can incorporate that.
Thank you. Any other MPO members before I call on J.R. Fry? Seeing none, J.R. Fry.
Thank you, and Hingham appreciates your support and the support of the board generally. One question, did the amendment to the 26 to 30 tip fund and now with the second vote, including the cost increase, the entire Hingham project in 27?
Ethan, I'm gonna let you answer that one. Unmute yourself.
Yes, that is part of this.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Ethan, you've got everything you need, right?
Yep, well, I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and in a couple of weeks, Ethan, we're going to talk about transit fill-in projects and other things related to the tip. Could you preview what we're doing next in a couple of weeks?
Yes, so besides the transit fill-in projects, we also have other roadway projects as well that may be subject to discussion there, alongside anything else. So
thank you, Ethan. Great job by you and Adriana. Really excellent work. All right, next item on the agenda is the critical urban freight corridor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair.
No worries, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shanti Gopalan Narayanan, and I'm the Freight Planning Program Manager, MPO staff. Today, I will be presenting the proposed updates to the critical urban freight corridors in the Boston region. A detailed memorandum of this effort is available on our website. Next slide, please. The National Highway Freight Network includes the interstate system and other critical freight corridors designated by states and MPOs. Roadways identified as critical freight corridors as part of the National Highway Freight Network are eligible for funding under the National Highway Freight Program. The critical urban freight corridors we are discussing today, once approved, will be included in the National Highway Freight Network. Next slide, please. MassDOT has requested updates to the critical urban freight corridors and critical rural freight corridors identified in the Boston region for incorporation in the 2027 Massachusetts Freight Plan. Massachusetts may designate up to a total of 150 miles of critical urban freight corridors and 300 miles of critical rural freight corridors statewide. MassDOT has allocated the Boston Region MPO with 48.86 miles of critical urban freight corridors and 2.56 miles of critical rural freight corridors. However, please note that the Boston region currently has no existing or proposed critical rural freight corridors. The previous designations of these corridors were made in 2017. Next slide, please. So to identify potential corridor updates, MPO staff issued a call for recommendations to municipalities and Massport. Based on the responses received, MPO staff coordinated with MassDOT to review and finalize the recommended corridors. So this update includes existing corridors that were reviewed for continued designation or removal, proposed corridors, including new segments and minor adjustments to some existing corridors. Next slide, please. This slide shows the existing and proposed corridors across the region. I will cover the Boston area in the next slide. So let's start with the northeast corner of the map. Existing corridors with continued designations include a segment of Yankee Division Highway in Peabody, which connects the north non-primary highway freight system and the primary highway freight system on I-95, Interstate 95. Mishwam Road, Commercial Way, and Atlantic Avenue in Auburn, which serve industrial area and provide a key connection to I-93. Proposed corridor from North Reading includes segments of Lowell Road, Main Street, and Park Street, which provide connections to Route 125 and Interstate 93 and serve nearby industrial areas. Proposed corridors in Littleton includes segments of King Street and Ayer Road between Interstate 495 and Spectacle Pond Road, providing access to industrial and manufacturing facilities in Littleton, as well as economic hubs in Ayer. Proposed corridors in Medway include segments of Milford Street and Main Street, which serves as a continuation of Route 109, providing access to Interstate 495. Moving on to existing corridors with continued designations, these include Commercial Street in Foxborough, serving extensive industrial area, Amwit's Memorial Highway in Randolph and Canton, which connects to the primary highway freight system and continues as a critical urban freight corridor in the neighboring RPA. Granite Street, Pond Street, and North Street in Braintree and Randolph, which provide connections to I-93. Next slide, please. So this slide highlights the corridors in Boston and surrounding urban area. Starting with Cambridge, Boston, Everett, and Chelsea, several existing corridors are recommended for continued designation, and these include segments along Soldiers Field, Front Road, Western Avenue, River Street, Massachusetts Avenue, Main Street, Binney Street, Broadway, Eastern Avenue, Beecham Street, 2nd Street, and Marginal Street. Robert Street and Commercial Street in Everett are proposed for inclusion, as Robin Street is a locally designated freight route that helps relieve traffic on Beecham Street, and Commercial Street provides access to multiple large-scale industrial waterfront facilities. Other proposed corridors in the area include Highland Avenue and Commercial Street in Malden, segments along Route 60 and Route 99 in Malden and Revere, segments along US Route 1 and US Route 1E in Revere. In Boston, existing corridors with continued designations include South Boston Hall Road, E Street, Fargo Street, D Street, and a segment of Summer Street. And please note that an existing segment in Summer Street between Thomas J. Butler Corridor and East 1st Street is proposed for removal. Now, moving on to proposed corridors in Boston, this includes Harbor Street and Fit Kennedy Avenue. Segments of Congress Street, D Street, and Summer Street are also proposed for inclusion, as they serve as preferred truck routes supporting industrial activity in South Boston. Next slide, please. Massport recently completed the construction of new Cypress Street in South Boston, which extends Cypress Street to East Street to create a more direct route for truck access. As a result, the critical urban freight corridor designation is proposed to be updated by removing D Street, segments of D Street, West First Street, and East Street, and adding new Cypress Street instead. So to sum up, the corridors proposed in this update recommends a total of 48.64 miles out of the allocated MPO mileage of 48.86 miles, remaining within the target mileage. Next slide, please. So today, the MPO staff request that the board votes to release the recommended critical urban freight corridors for a 21-day public comment period. And as next steps, the next steps include a public comment period from Friday, March 20 through Friday, April 10, 2026. Following the public comment period, MPO staff will bring the item back to the MPO board for endorsement at April 16, 2026 MPO meeting. After board endorsement, the recommended corridors will be submitted to MassDOT for certification, after which MassDOT will submit them to Federal Highway Administration for approval. Once approved by FHWA, the corridors will be incorporated into the upcoming Massachusetts Freight Plan, and projects allocated along these designated corridors will become eligible for National Highway Freight Program funding. Before I wrap up my presentation, I want to take a moment to quickly acknowledge and thank my colleagues Deborah Camus and Kenneth Domas for their contributions to the maps and graphics for this effort. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments. And now I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Shrivanti. Any questions? Lynn Diggins.
Forgive me, colleagues. I know it's 1 o'clock. I was poking around to try to answer some of my own questions. I kind of noticed that it seems like the defaults have changed from 75 to 150 to 150 300, and sometime after 2016. This is kind of leading to me. We have a leading question that may have another question. What is the nature of the funding that we get for these corridors?
Right. So you don't get any funding. It makes you eligible to use highway freight funding. So Massachusetts gets a certain amount of highway freight funding every year.
Okay.
And in order to be eligible for that funding, you have to be on the designated freight corridor. The projects have to be on the designated freight corridor.
And I just quickly dropped a link in the chat, which has some eligibility for projects. So this is basically US Code 167, which details on this whole designation process. So if you scroll down towards the end, there are project eligibility criteria listed. So I hope that's helpful.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I'll check that out. That'll be good enough. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Sandy Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. First of all, excellent job, Shrivanti, and everybody else who worked on this. I feel like I should know this as the person who used to do some of this work for the MPO. Are there any other implications to this CUFC designation other than making it eligible for freight network funding? Because I'm looking at some of these corridors, I think this is great work. And I'm also seeing that some of these are also key transit priority corridors for the MBTA. And we've had some negotiations back and forth in previous years, and I just want to make sure that there's nothing else that we need to be thinking about here as we're going forward with these designations.
Thank you for your question, Sandy. So as per the code, the designations only relate to National Highway Freight Program funding eligibility. So these are just like designations, and when there are projects eligible, there could be associated requirements or like obligations at that point. But for designations, there are no required eligibility.
Thank you. Sarah Lee.
Hi, just wanted to say thank you to Shravanti and the staff at CTPS, MassDOT, and the City of Boston, folks that we've been coordinating with. This has been a very long process over the course of many, many months. So I'm excited to see this here today. As mentioned, Massport was able to make some updates to keep the designations off of neighborhood roads in the City of Boston and have the freight access go on new roadways that we were able to build to keep the freight off of those other roads. So we certainly appreciate your report and thank you again for everybody that's been coordinating on this for the last many, many months. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I would like to just quickly acknowledge everybody who has been coordinating with us on this effort. Sarah, thank you so much for your acknowledgement, and thank you also to being very patient in this process and continuing to work with us and coordinating with us and MassDOT throughout this process. And I also want to thank all the municipal representatives who have got in touch with us, irrespective of whether those proposed recommendations made it to the designations or not. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of them for their robust coordination and support throughout this process.
Thank you. That being said, can I now get a motion in a second to approve the release of the CUFC list for a 21-day public comment period? Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, MAPC. I'll make a motion to approve the critical urban freight corridor list for a 21-day public comment period as presented today.
Thank you. Sarah Lee.
I will happily second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd, Michael O'Dowd,
It's pretty late. You can just assume that people who don't answer aren't here, right?
Roger, John
Thanks,
Romano,
Dave.
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swilakowski, yes.
Will Palmer,
Will Palmer, yes.
Lydia Housley,
Lydia Housley, yes.
Chris Osgood,
Chris Osgood, yes.
Jay Monty, Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Just quickly, is there anyone else on the roll that I have not called? Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the public engagement plan update. Sean Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean Rourke. I'm the manager of the MPO's Communications and Public Engagement Group. I'm here to discuss updates that MPO staff are developing for the MPO's public engagement plan. Next slide, please. Oh, and next slide, please. So the public engagement plan is the document that guides public engagement policies and practices throughout all of the MPO's work. It defines the processes the MPO uses for reaching interested stakeholders and establishes that those practices comply with federal statutes and federal regulations. Next slide. The requirements for a public engagement plan are laid out in federal regulation. On the screen is just one section of the Code of Federal Regulations about public engagement and regional transportation planning. planning. A public engagement plan or a public participation plan, as it's called in regulation, must do a few things. And that is define a process for reaching a variety of stakeholders. And those stakeholder types are listed out, and they include public transit users, people who walk, bike, and roll, and those with disabilities. It also must describe procedures and strategies for providing adequate public notice of meetings and public participation activities, making information accessible, including for people who rely on assistive technology like screen readers, seeking out input from traditionally underserved populations, and a process for periodically reviewing and improving practices. And finally, the plan must be endorsed by the MPO board and approved by FHWA. Next slide, please. So the reason we are updating the plan now is because it was last updated in 2021, and we are updating it to bring it into alignment with changes and improvements in our practices since then. Since 2021, our practices have evolved and expanded, as has the engagement landscape, driven by changes in technology and the expectations of our federal partners and community stakeholders. Next slide. The major elements of the plan are already in place and are expected to remain unchanged. Those include the role of the plan as a compliance document, the MPO's commitments to transparency, accessibility, inclusion, and continuous evaluation and improvement, and the high-level descriptions of the strategies and methods that the MPO uses to reach interested stakeholders. With those strategies and methods, we plan to make some additions and refinements, but not subtractions. The sort of tried and true methods of public forums and surveys still apply. We'll just be refining and making additions based on the evolutions in our practice over the last few years. Next slide, please. So some of the main focus areas of the updates will include incorporating the formation of the Community Advisory Council, the launch of the public engagement dashboard and the data collection and reporting methods that go along with it, codifying virtual engagement and remote meetings as a standard practice to supplement in-person engagement, clarifying policies around public review periods for certification documents and amendments, and then just updating program descriptions and workflows to match the above mentioned changes in our practices. Next slide. So the development timeline for the updated public engagement plan kicked off last week with a discussion with the Community Advisory Council. The Advisory Council will be a crucial partner in this process, as all of its members are the types of key stakeholders that we seek to reach and involve in our work. We will be coming back to the Advisory Council at least 2 more times during the development of these updates, and we plan to utilize the Advisory Council as a sounding board and as a resource for information about how stakeholders prefer to be engaged in our work. And then over the course of the next couple months, we'll be developing the updated public engagement plan. And at the May 21st board meeting, I will request that the board release the plan for a 45-day public review period. And that 45-day review period is the longest one that we have, and that is specifically required by federal regulation. And then on July 16th, I will request that the board formally endorse the plan. And then at that point, the plan will go into effect. Next slide, please. With that, I know it's been a very long meeting, but I do want to leave space for questions and discussion about the process I've outlined and the planned updates.
Thank you, Sean. Will?
Yeah, I just want to say from the Community Advisory Council's perspective, first of all, huge appreciation for the MPO staff. Sean and everyone have been really great at working with us. It's been a real pleasure. Just wanted to say the timeline that Sean laid out makes sense to us. I really want to call out that balancing the changes in the ecosystem, both regulatory and otherwise, with still being best practice is difficult, and we really are appreciative of how this plan incorporates those. For example, just the emphasis on virtual engagement. We know, and members of the council know, that makes it just so much more accessible for people who have mobility issues or aren't able to get into Boston at a particular time. These are all really great things. So I just wanted to give some very positive feedback there on behalf of the Advisory Council.
Thank you, Will. Other comments or questions or suggestions at this time? So, Sean, I didn't pay enough attention. I know we're voting it out in May. Are you coming back to the board one more time before then?
I wasn't planning to, but I certainly can, if that's something that the board would find helpful, as sort of like a midstream update, once we have some more specific language around the elements that we're updating.
Okay, I'll leave that to you and Tegan just to decide and make suggestions at the appropriate time. Thanks, Sean. Any other comments for Sean? Thanks so much, Sean. Next item on the agenda is member items. Are there any? Sandy Johnston.
Extremely quickly so that folks don't get mad at me given the time. Very excited to announce that at the MBTA, we have kicked off the public engagement process for Focus 2050, which is the next iteration of our program for mass transportation. We had last night an excellent virtual public meeting. The recording of that will be up shortly. I just put a link in the chat to the process page. And there are other opportunities for engagement coming up, and we'll also be wanting to talk to the MPO at some point about that. So just very happy to have that ongoing at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Lydia?
Thank you. Very quickly, Chair. Just wanted to mention it's a project of major interest to this group, that our next public meeting in a series of 3 that's been discussed previously for the Rutherford Ave project is scheduled now for the 31st of this month. I'm dropping a link into the chat for information on that meeting. And we've done some briefings with members here. If anybody else is interested in a briefing or would like more information, please just feel free to reach out to me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Tegan, can you remind us, we're meeting Monday, is it the 6th? Is that our next meeting? And it is hybrid, and attendance in person is recommended if you can at all make it. Is that correct?
Yes, Monday, April 6th, 10 a.m. at 10 Park Plaza. Hopefully you can make it. If not, you can join remotely.
Thank you. And then I'm going to wrap it up by taking a prerogative to say some thank yous. Thank you to staff. You did a great job. It wasn't easy. Everybody who presented today did a great job. Thank you all so much. Want to thank all the members for sticking with us and all the work you do. Sometimes doesn't get commented on enough, but it's amazing your commitment to the process. And then finally, I'd like to thank Eric Barassa for jumping in when my computer just shut down on its own volition. You're a great vice chair, Eric, and I don't think I say that out loud enough. Okay, so can I get a motion and a second to adjourn this meeting? Eric Barassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for those kind comments. And I will make a motion to adjourn. And I agree with everything you said. Great job by staff.
Thank you. Lynn Diggins.
Diggins seconds.
Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any objections? Seeing none, without objection, we are adjourned, and we'll see everybody on the 6th, either in person, hopefully, or virtually if not. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dave. Great meeting.
Thank you.